Everyone understood the circumstances under which Yin Yang had left. When Yin Jiao brought this up, Emperor Ning was displeased but smiled after seeing her punish herself with a cup of wine. Since she was a young girl, she probably did not do it on purpose. There was no need to punish her any further. Emperor Ning waved his hand and gave Eunuch Jiao a look. Quickly write down young Miss Yin's poem. If everyone could have the same level of creativity as young Miss Yin, it's possible that the poems from today's spring banquet could become something on par with the Lantingji Shu. Yin Jiao let out a long sigh of relief. She finally showed herself in front of Emperor Ning and everyone else. She was no longer just a young miss from the Prime Minister's manor that nobody knew about. But Yin Shuo was clearly displeased. He never thought that there would come a day when she would oppose him. She forced a smile and grabbed Yin Shuo's arm, trying to explain to him in a gentle tone, "Eldest brother, I was just..." Yin Shuo coldly pulled his arm back, leaving Yin Jiao's hand to hang in midair before she awkwardly retracted her hand. There's no need to explain. He was clearly smiling, but his words were as cold as metal. Those nearby were definitely unable to tell what he had said to her, leaving her all alone to bear this coldness in the middle of this banquet. The second cup of wine began drifting down the stream. This time, the lotus leaf drifted past Yin Shuo and Yin Jiao's seats and continued to bravely drift further downstream. Yu Fu smiled and Jiu Shubai and said, "I haven't seen eldest brother compose a poem before. I only ever saw a few essays that were left with teacher Lin from when eldest brother was younger." Jiu Shubai watched the lotus leaf drift past the eldest prince and gently laughed, saying, "Oh? Which essays did you see?" His eyes shimmered with curiosity as he looked at Yu Fu from up close. The latter was a little embarrassed. Slightly lowering her head, she thought back to Jiu Shubai's poems that she had seen and wanted to tell him that she would not forget something that she had seen once. Suddenly, she heard a sound. It turned out that a palace made near the eldest prince had dropped a pear into the stream. Initially, the lotus leaf had stopped in front of the second prince. With the splash caused by the pear, it was dislodged and continued downstream. With this happening, the cup stopped in front of Princess Danyang. "How could you be so careless?" The eldest prince gently scolded her, and the palace maid acknowledged her mistake, immediately dropping to her knees and not daring to offer any excuses. Under normal circumstances, dropping a pear was not a big deal, yet her carelessness had changed where the lotus leaf stopped. This made it a big deal. Everyone up above saw this, and it was Emperor Ning who said, "Forget it. She didn't do it on purpose." Since the cup stopped in front of Danyang, let's have Danyang compose a poem. Princess Danyang and Yin Shuo very rarely interacted. Allowing her to show off a little would allow Yin Shuo to know her better. He might even slowly come to adore her, and the marriage between the two would become even more harmonious. Princess Danyang was currently in a trance and was thinking about how she could steal Jiu Shubai back when she was suddenly named to compose a poem. Her mind was a mess. How could she be in the right mind to compose a poem? The second prince shot a glare at the eldest prince, his eyes filled with enmity. As Princess Danyang's imperial brother, the eldest prince clearly knew what she felt for Jiu Shubai, yet he insisted on having her compose a poem at a time like this. It was clear that he was trying to have her make a fool of herself. The eldest prince looked back at him with an innocent expression. "Second brother, don't be so anxious." It was imperial brother's servant who was clumsy and ruined second brother's chance at glory. "I will send this servant to second brother's palace later to be punished as you see fit. What do you think? No matter how clever a dog is, don't they still listen to their master? It's only you and me here. Why must eldest brother play dumb and refuse to admit it?" The eldest faintly smiled and retracted his gaze, ignoring his endless pestering. Who said that they were the only ones who could hear? Jiu Shubai and his group were sitting nearby. He had heard that once someone's martial arts ability reached a certain level, their hearing would be better than normal. Moreover, the extremely old deity of medicine was also present. He did not dare carelessly reveal what he truly thought. Princess Danyang carefully thought back. During the usual gatherings of noble young ladies, they would recite poems for fun. Right now, she could just recite a poem that had already been written before. It was just that she was in too much of a rush and could not think of a good one. Got one. It was a rather normal one, but it was rather fitting for the occasion. She stood up and slowly recited, "Cherry blossoms cover the mountaintops, and the spring melt streams down the mountain. The red flowers quickly wither much like love, the water flows endlessly like my worry." Once again, it was a heartfelt poem filled with misery, but with that exquisite poem by Yin Jiaro coming first, Princess Danyang's felt much more shallow. Moreover, it was not refined to express the trivial matters shared amongst young ladies to a crowd of court officials. Yin Jiaro's poem could be explained as thinking of her parents, but Princess Danyang's poem had the tone of an abandoned wife. Connecting the dots, they thought back to Emperor Ning sanctioning the marriage between Yu Fu and Jiyu Shubai. With these thoughts in mind, could it be that Princess Danyang thought of herself as Jiyu Shubai's abandoned wife? For a girl who was not yet married, such behavior was far too lacking in dignity. In the crowd, some began to quietly discuss this. There were also some who covered their mouths and secretly laughed. Imperial consort Xian cast a quiet look of scorn in her direction. This sort of princess born of the Empress was worthy of showing off in front of Emperor Ning. Emperor Ning's expression immediately turned ugly, as he looked at Princess Danyang with a look of disappointment that she had never seen before. She was not just losing face for herself. More importantly, she was losing face for Emperor Ning. He was the one who sanctioned the marriage, and Princess Danyang was now using this sort of poem to express her opposition. How could he step down with grace? Emperor Ning quietly looked at her, his chest rising and falling rapidly. Imperial consort Xian pretended not to see. She hoped for it to get as out of hand as possible. Of course, she would not try to advise Emperor Ning to stop. On the other hand, Zun Kai looked up from his chicken leg. "Your Majesty has just recovered and should avoid getting angry. If a child is being naughty, just give them a beating. Just look at Tian Shu." He turned his head and suddenly remembered that Tian Shu had not accompanied him into the palace. Instead, he remained in Marquis Gu's manor to train with Jiyu Hanmo. This was better. Like this, he could speak ill of him without worry. Tian Shu was raised by me from a young age through various beatings. Just look at how well behaved he is now. Yu Fu was very supportive, bursting out laughing. Following this, Jiyu Shubai and Jiyu Huijiang also began laughing. The eldest prince laughed and cupped his hands, saying, "Deity of Medicine's words are reasonable. Your second disciple is indeed very well behaved." That was right, he was so well behaved that he even refused to let go of his sword when entering Emperor Ning's bedchamber, and so well behaved that he knocked out tens of the Jiyu family's soldiers upon arriving in Eastern Ling. There were none who were more well behaved. The eldest prince continued, "I just wonder, was Sister Yu Fu ever punished by Deity of Medicine?" He deliberately made use of what Zun Kai had said to change the topic. Emperor Ning's expression had become much better, and he no longer looked at Princess Danyang. Although Danyang was the second prince's younger sister, the one to have made an appearance to alleviate the situation had been the eldest prince. It could be seen just how much he valued familial relations. Emperor Ning tightly held Imperial Consort Xian's hand with a very approving look. Imperial Consort Xian smiled even more gently. She and the eldest prince had enjoyed all of the gains, while the one to lose face and become hated by Emperor Ning was the second prince's younger sister. It was natural that she would be able to smile. Zun Kai immediately argued back, "How could that be possible? Our Yu Fu has always been understanding from a young age. I could never bring myself to touch her pinky, much less punish her. Some children only become well-behaved after a beating, and some are very well-behaved without needing a beating. Marquis Jiyu, what do you think? Look, look." The Zun Kai who looked down on everyone else did not hold back when talking about his second disciple. Only Yu Fu received such kind treatment. Such a master, was he not a little too biased? Princess Danyang, who had been implicitly named as a part of a certain group of children, became pale, as she realized that she had become the butt of everyone's jokes. This deity of medicine must have done it on purpose, making fun of her for Yu Fu's sake. Jiyu Huijiang slowly nodded with approval on his face. Deity of medicine is right. Like the 7 children of my family, Shubai and Juji were practically never beaten, but Jiuyi will get a beating every few days. But none can compare with Yu Fu. Yu Fu is even more understanding than all of them. Why did it feel like Jiu Huijiang was trying to steal away a child? He competed with Zun Kai in praising Yu Fu, as if whoever praised her more would become Yu Fu's actual family. Insane, it was truly insane. Emperor Ning gently coughed to remind the two. Right now, Yu Fu was not just their child. She was also considered his daughter. First, there were Jiu Shubai and Tian Shu fighting outside of Emperor Ning's bedchamber to fight for a wife. Then there were Zun Kai, Jiu Huijiang, and Emperor Ning who fought to claim a daughter. Just how desirable was Yu Fu? As the focal point of the argument, Yu Fu just sat there obediently and pretended to not hear anything. If she dared to interject, it would definitely lead to even more conflict. She did not know about other people, but she understood Zun Kai very well. He would definitely argue until he won. The old guy was like a really old child. His personality brought her and her many fellow disciples much laughter. When Yu Fu recalled the past in Immortals Valley, she could not help but smile foolishly, but a piece of pear was suddenly stuffed into her mouth. Jiu Shubai looked at her with a bit of delight. Just let them argue. At home, you will leave father and get married to your husband. You will belong to me for decades to come. Yu Fu's heart nearly skipped a beat. He was so domineering, yet she could not get mad at him at all. In Marquis Gu's manor, Jiu Hanmo and Tian Shu lay on the ground without any concern for image, their swords carelessly laying on the ground to the side. The ground nearby was littered with shredded flower petals and leaves. The martial arts training ground looked like a whirlwind had come through. Without any care for maintaining their elegance, they fought for an entire day. They were completely exhausted. The two lay on the ground, breathing heavily. After a long pause, Jiu Hanmo spoke first. Tian Shu, do you really not like Yu Fu? TSK, how could that be possible? Jiu Hanmo immediately sat up and picked up his sword to teach him a lesson. He then heard Tian Shu say, "She is my junior disciple sister. I watched her grow up. She's beautiful, smart, kind, and well-behaved. Who could possibly not like her? But it's not that kind of feeling." Oh. Jiu Hanmo lay back down on the ground. He had always been a person with few words. Tian Shu, however, was different. He had quite a bit to say to people he was familiar with. Jiu Hanmo and he could be considered friends through fighting. In his eyes, Jiu Hanmo could be considered someone familiar, thus he had more to say. You don't know, right? I like men. What? This time, Jiu Hanmo really leaped up. What are you blustering over? It's not like I like you. The one that I like is our senior disciple sister. How can a man like men? You actually told this to me without the slightest bit of embarrassment. I would rather not have known. It was rare for Jiu Hanmo to get so shaken. Tian Shu found him quite interesting and sat up. He patted the spot to his side, gesturing for Jiu Hanmo to sit down to speak. Do you know why I like men? Jiu Hanmo shook his head with a cold expression. Because I initially did not know that senior disciple sister is actually a man. Right, he did indeed say sister and not brother. Jiu Hanmo said, your senior disciple sister is a man who dresses like a woman? Tian Shu plainly nodded. If I had known that he was a man from the start, I definitely would not have liked him. But after I liked him, I would keep confessing to him, and he would keep rejecting me. On the 6th time, he took off his clothes. The two sat on the ground and chatted for a while with great emotion. It turned out that the person Tian Shu liked was called Hua Wujie. He was the deity of medicine's disciple and always dressed in women's clothing, and the people in Immortals Valley referred to him as eldest senior disciple sister. Who knew that he would actually be a man? It was just that he liked dressing as a woman. Zun Kai also knew about this but did not care about it. You don't like men dressed as women, and I don't like them either. I think it's perverse. But after Master found out about it, he was very casual about it. He said that a common person's life only lasts for a few decades. They should just do whatever they like and wear what they like. What your senior disciple sister wears, how is that any of your damn business? Jiyu Hanmo, that did indeed sound like something Zun Kai would say. Since you already know that he's a man, why don't you just stop liking him? Once these words came from Jiyu Hanmo, he saw Tian Shu's cold face distorted like a block of ice cracking from a fire. He gnashed his teeth and faintly smiled through the anger. If I could stop liking him as easily as you said it, it would not be love. Heavens knew just how much he wanted to no longer like a man. Jiyu Hanmo fell silent. He had always been uncomfortable with these sorts of things. Hearing Tian Shu's experiences, he sympathized with him greatly. Unfortunately, he did not understand what this sort of love meant. In his everyday life, he was either training or training. All of the matters in the military and at the manor were taken care of by father, eldest brother, and second brother. There was no need for him to worry about such things. There was not even a need for him to look after his younger brothers and sister. His life was simple and pure. Aside from familial love, he still did not understand any other kinds of affection. Tian Shu saw his blank expression and silently cursed, "There's actually someone with a colder face than me. How unromantic." After saying this, he lifted his sword. "Come, let's continue." Third young sir. Jiyu Hanmo picked up his sword and suddenly saw the servant from his courtyard enter the martial arts training area. He looked like he was in a rush. Tian Shu also unhappily looked over at the servant, hating that he had disrupted his enthusiasm. The servant saw the ice-cold expression that was on par with the third young sir's and lowered his head in fear. "Third young sir, this servant has some important news to report." "Speak." The servant looked at Tian Shu with hesitation. It would not be good if outsiders heard about the family's bad news. Jiyu Hanmo furrowed his brow. "Yu Fu's senior disciple brother is part of the Marquis manor. If you have something to say, just say it." "Yes, third young sir. You sent me to keep an eye on the fourth young sir in case he sought out that actor, Yu Guan. Just now, the fourth young sir left the manor." Sure enough, he set out on horse for where that actor lives outside the city. What? Jiyu Hanmo's expression turned incredibly ugly. Jiyu Wenqing had always been prudent and kind. Many people said that he had Jiyu Shubai's bearing and that he would definitely become more talented as he grew older. Who knew that he would mingle with that lowly actor time and time again? He truly did not have any sense of propriety. Jiyu Hanmo's expression changed as he lifted his sword and moved to follow the servant out. Tian Shu faintly said, "Master and Yu Fu have both gone into the palace to enjoy the banquet, and there's nothing for me to do in the manor. How about I go with you?" Jiyu Hanmo did not care about such things. He simply nodded and walked out. The two set out on horse and headed out of the city. Not long later, they saw a collective of buildings at the foot of the mountain. In front of the buildings, there were red paper lanterns hanging. Outside of the city, there were mostly farmer families, and they were reluctant to light candles at night, so how could they be willing to light the lanterns outside? Jiyu Hanmo looked over at Tian Shu and said, "Do you see that? The buildings with lanterns are all brothels. At night, they light the lanterns to let their customers know where they are. That Yu Guan lives in there." Tian Shu very rarely left the isolated valley. Hearing what was said, he just quietly nodded. "Based on what you said, this actor called Yu Guan is the headlining performer of the troupe and a proper worker. Why are you so unwilling to allow the fourth young sir to interact with him? You might not know, but acting is not a proper profession in Eastern Ling. It's not much different from being a prostitute. Moreover, fourth brother is his benefactor. If he is thankful for fourth brother, he should take the initiative to cut off ties with fourth brother. What reason does he have for enticing fourth brother to come and visit him?" Tian Shu did not say anything else. The two rode over, and women came out from the buildings to receive them. Seeing that the two did not look like common folk and looked like they had come from wealthy families, the women tried to get close and start a conversation. The second young sir was indeed handsome, and he looked quite wealthy, but his eyes were too frightening. He was like a chunk of ice. Just one look would make them shudder. Which one is Yu Guan's house? It turned out they had come looking to have fun with a man. It was no wonder he was so cold toward these beautiful women. A middle-aged woman in garish clothes and heavy makeup summoned some courage to step forward. waving the green handkerchief in her hand, "There, in the back. It's the one nearest the foot of the mountain." Jiyu Hanmo tossed a tail of silver to her, then headed in that direction. The woman caught the silver, and her eyes lit up. Who knew that just a few words would earn her such a plentiful payment? Ah. This is even more than I would earn from receiving clients all day. Those two young sirs really are wealthy. So what if they have money? They came looking for men. Let's go. A faint sound came from the building near the foot of the mountain. Someone was performing a play. There was even the sound of an instrument being played. Compared to the loud performance on a stage, this was much more tasteful. It was just that the voice of the one performing sounded a little familiar. Jiyu Hanmo furrowed his brow, no daring to believe his own theory. Tian Shu tugged on his sleeve and pointed up. Jiyu Hanmo immediately understood, and the two soared up onto the roof. Lifting a roof tile, they immediately understood the situation inside. The small room was tidy and simple. In the middle of the room, a person dressed in a red costume was singing. His voice was choppy, and his movements were a little stiff. It was clear that he was not a professional, yet every verse was sung with sincerity. To the side, a man with powder on his face faintly smiled. Seated on a small stool, he played the accompaniment. "A flower for you, flower-like maiden, but remember that water flows like water flows." The man singing raised his sleeves, as he sang the most moving part of Peony Pavilion. Every movement was full of emotion. The flowing white sleeves waved about in the air, and when they reached up, it was like watching a white lotus flower bloom from up close. It also blocked the view for the two on the roof. The flowing sleeves quickly dropped, and Jiyu Hanmo's expression became extremely ugly. The one singing was Jiyu Wenqing. The one playing the instrument suddenly stopped, and Yu Guan's cheerful voice could be heard. "Fourth young sir has improved significantly this time. Who knew that you would be so good after practicing just a few times? Really? I felt that I was a little stiff when I got to that one part. Look here, dash bang." The door to the room was forcefully kicked open, and the door itself fell to the ground. Yu Guan held his chest from the shock. Jiyu Wenqing had been interrupted, and he instinctively picked up his sword and moved to stand in front of Yu Guan, pointing his sword at the door. The fallen door had kicked up a lot of dust, as two familiar figures walked in through the door. The sword in Jiyu Wenqing's hand began to tremble. "Third brother?" Under direct examination, Jiyu Hanmo's eyes became even colder. His gaze landed on the performer's clothes that Jiyu Wenqing wore and the flowing sleeves, and his eyes were filled with unhappiness. Yu Guan saw this and hastily helped Jiyu Wenqing remove his costume. The two moved quickly, and the costume was quickly removed. Jiyu Hanmo coldly looked over Yu Guan, but his words were directed at Jiyu Wenqing. "As the son of a prominent family, you actually dare to sink so low and learn to act? The martial arts that father taught you, was it for you to come and throw your sleeves around? Family matters were hard to get involved in." Seeing Yu Guan tremble with fear, Tian Shu walked out of the room. He had come with Jiyu Hanmo, and it would not be good to scare someone with no martial arts ability to the point of causing trouble would not be good. Jiyu Wenqing opened his mouth and said like an unfilial son, "Third brother, I just felt that things have calmed down for the manor. His Majesty has conferred many rewards, and Yu Fu was conferred the title of princess. Even if I did some things that are improper, it could not be made use of against the manor. The more that Marquis Gu's manor enjoys His Majesty's grace, the more important it becomes that you do not act improperly. Just looked at yourself. You're even worse than Jiyu Xiong and Jiyu Yi. Even they aren't so lacking in understanding." This was in front of Yu Guan, and Tian Shu would likely be able to hear from outside the door, thus he did not want to say too much. He just coldly said, "You still aren't going to follow me back to the manor?" Since he had been taught from a young age, Jiyu Wenqing had always respected his elders, and he did not dare go against his older brother's orders. He could only give Yu Guan a look. Yu Guan had always been good at reading the atmosphere. Seeing the current situation, he gave him a reassuring look. Jiyu Hanmo was an educated young sir from a prominent family. He had only kicked down his door and had not beaten him or insulted him. Moreover, he was right. He himself was someone of low standing. Ji-yu Wenqing mingling with him was indeed improper. Ji-yu Hanmo strode out of the room, and Ji-yu Wenqing followed him out with his head down. A strong gust of wind blew into the room through the exposed doorway. Yu Guan leaned against the dusty wall and watched the three ride off in a daze. He thought back to every time that Ji-yu Wenqing had taken advantage of when there was nobody home to come and ask him to teach him to perform with his sincere and joyous expression. Ji-yu Wenqing really liked acting. He truly did not think that acting was lowly. On the contrary, he felt that it was very interesting. He had traveled with his troupe to many places and met many young sirs from many prominent families. Regardless of whether they had money or influence, there was never another person who treated him as earnestly as Ji-yu Wenqing. It was not for the sake of toying with him nor to mess with him. Every time that the two got together in this small room, one would sing and one would learn. While one trained in singing, the other played the accompaniment. It was quite enjoyable. Unfortunately, those enjoyable days would probably never come again. "Oh, is this not Yu Guan? What are you standing there on your own and crying for?" There was not much business during the day, and the girls working at the brothel would come to observe Yu Guan when they were idle. It was very rare for such extravagant young sirs to come and visit a place as uncouth as theirs, much less one so brilliant. Who knew that they would happen to see Yu Guan made a fool of? Yu Guan immediately wiped away his tears and forced a smile, saying, "It's nothing. The wind just got into my eyes." He turned around and walked back into the room. Although he lived near these brothels, he had never interacted with these people much. They also were not on the same path in life. The girls saw that he was ignoring them. This made them want to bully him even more, thus they barged straight into his room. The door had been kicked down by Ji-yu Hanmo and could not be immediately repaired. He wanted to chase these girls out but had no way of doing so. For a while, he was angry and ashamed. One of the girls was eating seeds and said with a smile, "What, are you afraid that we'll make your place dirty? You don't even think about what difference there is between us. Are we not the same type of people? What, a rabbit god dares to have embarrassed of us? Damn." A mouthful of seed husks was spat out from her red lips. They fluttered in the air like snowflakes before landing on Yu Guan's clean floor. In front of Marquis Gu's manor, the cold-faced Ji-yu Hanmo dismounted. Ji-yu Wenqing, who was like a punching bag, followed along behind him. The soldiers saw this sort of thing quite often and were accustomed to seeing it. It was just that the third young sir's expression seemed to be particularly chilly today. "Have father and elder brothers returned yet?" Replying to third young sir, "They have not." Ji-yu Hanmo nodded and stepped through the door. Ji-yu Wenqing obediently followed along. Tian Shu was at the back, deliberately slowing his pace, allowing the two of them to get further away before walking up to the soldiers. "If you don't want anything to happen to your fourth young sir, quickly send someone into the palace to inform your marquis." What terrible thing did the fourth young sir do? The soldier knew that Tian Shu would not say such a thing for no reason and hastily cupped his hands, saying, "If something is really going to happen, immortal practitioner of medicine, please stop it. I will immediately set out." Someone had already led a horse over. Seeing the soldier rush over, Tian Shu continued into the manor. Third brother, fourth brother, Yu Tu, Ji-yu Xiong and Ji-yu Yi left their courtyard and found that everyone in the manor had disappeared. Those who had gone into the palace were in the palace, but Ji-yu Hanmo and Ji-yu Wenqing should still be at the manor. Why was it that neither of them could be found, and even Tian Shu was missing? The two panicked for a while. Who knew that when they saw Ji-yu Hanmo, they would see a terrifying expression. As for Ji-yu Wenqing, he miserably followed along behind him. It was immediately clear that he had been caught doing something wrong. Strange, why was it that fourth brother seemed to be more adept at making mistakes than them in recent days? Last time, he did not return to the city overnight because he was with that Yu Guan person. What mistake could he have made this time? Ji-yu Yi summoned the courage to say, "Third brother, what did fourth brother, kneel?" Jiyu Hanmo shouted fiercely. This scared Jiyu Yi and left him too scared to speak, as he went to weakly hide off to the side. Jiyu Wenqing lifted the hem of his robe and kneeled outside the main hall while keeping his back perfectly straight. He did not make a single argument on his own behalf. Just stay kneeling there. You can stand up when you have reflected on the situation properly. Jiyu Wenqing suddenly said, "Third brother, I want to ask you. How did you know that I was at Yu Guan's place? Did you have someone follow me?" It was Yu Guan again. Jiyu Xiong and Jiyu Yi exchanged a look. This was bad. This was bad. Third brother hated actors the most. Fourth brother was really unlucky this time. Jiyu Hanmo did not refute it. If you were able to see the truth, what need would I have to send someone to follow you? I haven't done anything unseemly. I just like operas and happened to learn a few from Yu Guan. Why is third brother so unwilling to accept it? What? Jiyu Wenqing actually went to find Yu Guan to learn to act. In Eastern Ling, there were exceedingly few young sirs from prominent families who would take up acting unless their family was in decline. It was no wonder third brother was angry. But if it was just learning to act, it did not seem to be excessive. You still refuse to repent. Jiyu Hanmo's voice was cold. You are truly incorrigible. Saying this, he flicked his sleeve and left. He was like a chain of firecrackers about to explode, so he left before he could explode. Jiyu Yi let out a long sigh. So scary. I was scared to death. Third brother hasn't gotten that mad in a really long time. What are you getting scared for? The one being cursed isn't you. Quickly help fourth brother think of something. Jiyu Xiong rolled his eyes at him, and the two squatted down next to Jiyu Wenqing and held their chins in contemplation. Jiyu Wenqing forced a smile. There's no need for you two to help me come up with some ideas. Be careful to not make third brother get mad at you guys too. Jiyu Yi suddenly smacked himself on the forehead, as he had come up with a good idea. Right, what is the point of us thinking of something here? Little Yu Fu is smart. She will definitely have an idea. Also, third brother dares to get mad at us, but he doesn't dare get mad at Yu Fu. This idea sounded reliable, and Jiyu Xiong stood up and said, "Then I will go and have someone go into the palace to tell Yu Fu. You sneak fourth brother some rations. Who knows how long he'll need to stay kneeling." The two went their separate ways. When Jiyu Xiong arrived outside, he saw that none of Jiyu Hanmo's people were outside before shouting, "Quickly send someone into the palace to tell young miss that fourth brother is in trouble." The soldier cupped his hands and said, "Fifth young sir, the immortal practitioner of medicine already had us send someone, and they've been gone for some time. Don't worry. It was second senior disciple." Jiyu Xiong laughed, who knew that second senior disciple would have a cold expression but be so kind-hearted and compassionate. He's also so considerate of our Marquis Gu's manners familial matters. Who is being considerate of your familial matters? Tian Shu's voice suddenly came from above his head. He was casually laying on the roof, as the hem of his robes billowed. I was worried that Yu Fu would be sad without her fourth brother. Your third brother does not understand feelings of love and is far more vicious in his moves. The palace banquet ended, and just as Jiyu Huijiang's group arrived outside of the palace, they saw a group of fast horses coming over. The one riding the horse was a soldier from Marquis Gu's manor. Seeing their group, he immediately dismounted and went to report, "Lord Marquis, the fourth young sir did something improper and was caught by the third young sir. He is currently being punished in the manor." The immortal practitioner of medicine directed this subordinate to come and report. Would Lord Marquis please quickly return to the manor to take a look? Jiyu Wenqing had always been reasonable and steady. How could he make a serious mistake that would need Tian Shu to intervene? Yu Fu immediately said, "Is it because of Yu Guan?" Aside from this, she could not think of Jiyu Wenqing making any other mistake. The soldier thought for a bit. "I only know that they came back from outside of the city. As for anything else, I do not know for certain. They returned from outside of the city. It is absolutely related to Yu Guan. Master, Head General, you two return to the manor first. I will make a trip outside of the city." During the idle time a few days earlier, Yu Fu finally learned how to ride a horse at the martial arts training area. Now that her body had begun to grow, her legs were now able to reach the stirrups. As a result, learning to ride a horse was very easy. Seeing her ride off on a soldier's horse, Jiyu Shubai wanted to stop her but was stopped by Zun Kai. Don't worry. The disciples of Immortals Valley have a natural affinity with animals. This is especially true of Yu Fu. She is able to ride a horse and protect herself. If you guys always treat her like a flower to be kept in a greenhouse, when will she get a chance to grow up? After saying this, he turned around and climbed into a carriage, no longer paying attention to the father and children. He really was carefree. Yu Fu was sent away from the valley at just 12 years old, and she had been given so much gold and silver. He really was not worried about Yu Fu being robbed. It was fortunate that it was the Jiyu family's army that took Yu Fu away. If she had fallen into someone else's hands, who knew just how regretful he might be. But since he insisted on this, Jiyu Huijiang and the others could not say anything. Forget it, since deity of medicine believes in her this much, just let Yu Fu go on her own. Let's go back to the manor to see Wenqing. Yu Fu rode outside of the city and followed the directions that Jiyu Wenqing had previously told her, riding north along the main road. Upon reaching the foot of the mountains, she would see quite a number of buildings with red lanterns hanging in front. She held the horse's reins and stopped in front of the buildings, then tied the horse up next to a tree and carefully observed the buildings. Fourth brother only said that it was here but did not say which one it was. Based on Yu Guan's personality and identity, which one would he live in? Young miss. A voice suddenly came from behind her, and Yu Fu was given a shock, immediately turning around and taking a few steps back. She just saw an old woman whose face was covered in white powder looking back at her with a smile. She also had a wildflower in her hair and looked very flighty. The way that she looked at her was exactly the same as the way a wolf would look at a sheep. Yu Fu felt very uncomfortable. The old woman said, "I came out to dump some water and saw young miss in expensive clothing and makeup. You do not look like one of our girls, so I wanted to come and ask. What has young miss come here for?" While speaking, she continued to look over Yu Fu. Yu Fu mentally could not tolerate it. "I came to look for someone and will not trouble you." After saying this, she headed off along the path on her own. She examined the buildings, hoping that she might be able to figure out where Yu Guan lived. The old woman was not particularly annoyed by her cold refusal and quietly followed behind Yu Fu. Yu Fu kept her in mind and noticed that she was following her. What did she want to do? Before she could think things through, two flirtatious women came from the path ahead and looked at her with their hands on their hips. "Oh, Mama, you've really found some nice goods. She's a lot better than the two of us, but she's a little young." One of the girls casually sized her up, while the other girl slightly frowned. "Mama, this doesn't look like the girl from the usual family. It can't be that something happened, right?" Although these girls from the brothels had lowly statuses and were unfit to be seen in public, they had served a few people of noble status. Looking at the fabric of the clothes that Yu Fu wore, the jade tablet hanging from her hip, and the head ornaments in her hair, none of them were common items. The old woman following Yu Fu smiled joyously. "Of course, she's not the girl from the usual family. She rode a horse over. What normal family would have such a good horse?" In the end, those two girls were still young. Hearing the old woman say this, they were quite shaken. "A young miss from a wealthy family? Then Mama, why haven't you sent her off yet? If people come searching for her, how could we endure that?" The girl who had frowned felt more and more that something was off the longer that she looked at Yu Fu's clothes. "Look, don't the clothes that she's wearing look like court clothes? I remember that only court clothes have such broad sleeves. Could it be that she's a noble from the palace?" The old woman squinted her eyes and looked over Yu Fu, saying in a forceful voice, "Don't spout nonsense. What noble from the palace? Could a noble come to a place like ours on their own? Such a beautiful little girl, if we tie her up, it's possible that she could sell for hundreds of taels of silver in a single night. Do you not want to make money?" While they were talking, Yu Fu was focused on the buildings nearby and suddenly saw a building without a red lantern hanging in front at the foot of the mountain. "Right, Yu Guan did not do any shady business, so there was no need for him to hang a red lantern in front of his door to attract visitors. Have you guys finished speaking? Yu Fu suddenly spoke up. Her dimples were charming, and her eyes arced from her smile, but the look in her eyes was frightening. The two younger girls did not dare move, and Yu Fu turned around, curling her finger at the old woman. Come on. The old woman hesitated for a moment. No matter how she thought about it, she was reluctant to let as desirable a product as Yu Fu get away. The bearing of a daughter of a wealthy family really was different from those who worked in brothels. She could definitely be sold for a large sum. For the sake of money, she went for it. She refused to believe that a little girl like her would be able to take her on. The old woman rushed at Yu Fu, but before she could even reach the hem of Yu Fu's clothes, poison needles flew from Yu Fu's hand. 3 landed in a neat row on the old woman's forehead. White powder drifted down, as the old woman's eyes rolled back in her head, and her entire body went limp and collapsed to the ground. The 2 girls were scared silly. Young miss, what did you do to her? Yu Fu did not answer and asked, is she your mother? I heard you calling her mother earlier. No, young miss might not know, but we are also girls that she abducted. She's raised us from 15 years old until now. We took care of customers for her to make money. She saw young miss come here alone and wanted us to come with her to capture you, but we've never done this sort of thing before. Yu Fu believed them. If they were skilled at abducting girls, they would not be so cowardly, immediately becoming lost upon seeing the old woman fall. Since you were also abducted, do you want to work a proper job? Proper job? The 2 had blank looks on their faces. They had become prostitutes at a young age. Aside from this, what else could they do? Young miss, we don't know how to do anything. Yu Fu remembered that she still had some important matters to handle today and pulled out a couple of small scraps of gold from her coin purse. Take these. Once you've thought things through, come and find me. She was struck by my poison needle. If you want to save her life, send her to the medical clinic. If you don't want to save her, just send her to the government office in the capital. The people there will know how to deal with her. Her life is in your hands. While the 2 were still stunned, Yu Fu left. Seeing the old woman collapsed on the ground without waking up, the 2 hesitated for a while. Shinger, we didn't do anything earlier. Did you hear what that young miss said? If we send the old woman to the government office, they will naturally know how to deal with her. This means that the people at the government office recognize the young miss poison needles. To be able to have officials immediately recognize them and know how to deal with them, just what sort of status must that person have? Yu Fu arrived at the building without a red lantern hanging out front and heard the voices of some women come from inside. This made her think that she had come to the wrong house. Just as she was planning to leave, she suddenly heard a woman shout and curse, "Shit! Did you think that just because you also became a noble after getting a noble guest? A man who sells his body is even lower than us women. What nonsense are you spouting? When have I ever done such a thing?" The man's delicate and tender voice was trembling with anger, but Yu Fu was able to recognize that it belonged to Yu Guan. He was like a ball of cotton sinking in a well. He sank lower and lower until the well water had completely permeated his being. He restrained himself and kept a low profile, leaving others unable to read his true emotions. All that remained was modesty. Just like when they had first met backstage. The words that had just been said were subtly filled with anger. This was probably his limit, right? Oh, you're angry? Another girl gave Yu Guan a shove, pushing him onto a chair. The young sirs can scarcely be blamed for liking you. A man who's even prettier than a woman. If I saw this, I'd like you too. She gently lifted Yu Guan's chin, and Yu Guan subconsciously dodged back, accidentally falling back with the chair. His body was instantly covered in the shells of the seeds that the prostitutes had spat out, and his clean clothes were dyed by the spit and would not come out no matter how hard he tried. The more desperately that Yu Guan tried to pat himself clean, the more delighted the prostitutes became. Stop patting yourself. No matter how hard you try, you won't be clean. People like us were dirty from birth. Why bother pretending that you refuse to get close to us? You are the dirty ones, not him. Without the sound of the door opening, there were only blue skies and distant mountains outside. At the door was a young girl wearing court clothes with wide sleeves, and she had the bearing of a deity. For a moment, everyone was stunned. Aside from people like them, the only people who visited shady areas like these would be hedonistic sons of wealthy families. How could such a noble young miss appear? Her beautiful court clothes and elegant ornaments, it was likely that only someone that beautiful would be worthy of wearing them, right? Young Miss Yu Fu? Yu Guan looked at her in disbelief and wanted to step forward to greet her but was worried that his dirty clothes could affect Yu Fu. He could only salute her from a distance. It was not because of her status. It was just because she had suddenly appeared when he was looking for help. Young Miss Yu Fu? This name sounds familiar. One person wanted to step forward for a closer look, and Yu Guan immediately rushed forward to stop them. Don't run into young Miss Yu Fu. She has already been conferred the title of Princess Xinjiang by His Majesty. She is not someone you can afford to offend. Princess Xinjiang? They remembered. The daughter that Lord Marquis Jiyu was raising, was she not the one His Majesty had just conferred the title of princess? Was her name Yu Fu? Her name had been spread through the capital, and it was because of last year's palace banquet. At that time, she had been nicknamed the deity of the zither. You're messing with us. How could a princess come to a place like this? The prostitutes were quite uncertain, and Yu Fu raised her hand. The silver needles between her fingers were particularly eye-catching. How about you try it? The rumors said that Princess Xinjiang was a disciple of the deity of medicine and was an immortal practitioner of poison from Immortal's Valley. If they really were pricked by her needles, what would happen? It was better to believe that there was than believe that there was not, and everyone retreated from Yu Guan's room. Yu Fu nodded to him. Go and get changed first. There's no need to worry about me. Yu Guan awkwardly cupped his hands then retreated behind a screen. He quickly changed into clean clothes and came back out. While he was changing, Yu Fu looked over his room and came to an understanding. He was someone who liked cleanliness. Although his room was plainly furnished, it had a simple elegance to it. It did not look like it belonged to a lively actor. Instead, it looked like it belonged to a hermit. Unfortunately, the clean floor was made dirty and unseemly by the sunflower seed shells. Yu Guan did not have time to worry about this. Young Miss Yu Fu, did you come looking for this lowly one? Did something happen to the fourth young sir? You must have heard about third brother's personality, and there's no need for me to tell you what he hates the most. You should also know how fourth brother will be punished. I came to tell you in the future, please don't get close to fourth brother and lead him down a bad path. Yu Fu suddenly changed her tone. She had told off those prostitutes for him just a moment earlier, but now she said such a thing. For a moment, Yu Guan did not dare believe it, as he stood in place in a daze while at a complete loss. Based on his memories, Yu Fu was not like this. At that time, when she met him for the first time backstage, she was still surrounded by a childish aura. Although Marquis Jiyu treated her like a treasure, she did not end up spoiled. It was at that moment that he knew that Yu Fu was not like the average young miss from a wealthy family. She would not look down on him because of his status. She was just like Jiyu Wenqing. Right, Jiyu Wenqing. He would often mention Yu Fu to him, saying that Yu Fu was the one who was most supportive of him coming to visit. Why was it that Yu Fu's tune had now changed? Yu Guan was stunned for quite some time. Walking over to the table, he pulled out a chair and wiped it with a sleeve. Young miss, please sit to talk. I was preparing to give this chair to the fourth young sir, so it should be relatively clean. He then used his feet to sweep away the seeds on the floor without any concern for his shoes getting dirty. When he finally managed to clean up a spot, Yu Fu quietly sat down on the chair. She wanted to hear how Yu Guan would respond. Being stared at by her young and imposing gaze, Yu Guan took a deep breath. After a long pause, he finally spoke, responding to young Miss Yu Fu. This lowly one did not lead the fourth young sir down a bad path. Fourth young sir saved this lowly one's life, so this lowly one has always treated him well. How could I lead him down a bad path? Then why did you teach fourth brother acting? Fourth young sir is kind and thorough. He likes poetry and operas, and this lowly one happens to be an actor, thus he was taught a bit. Although he has learned, he does not go out to act, nor does he mingle with the sons of wealthy families. He is merely acting for fun. How could it be considered as learning something bad? Yu Fu kept her eyes on him. At first, she was expressionless, but a smile slowly appeared. She was smiling. Yu Guan was so confused that he did not know what to say. What exactly was the meaning of this? Could it be that what she had said earlier was meant to instigate him? Yu Fu said with a smile, "Since you know that you did not lead fourth brother down a bad path, why is it that you don't dare to explain it clearly to third brother? Could it be that you have done something bad that won't allow you to raise your head in front of third brother?" Sure enough. No, I have always stayed away from trouble and have not done anything improper. When fourth young sir saved me, I happened to be getting attacked by two playboys and could not get away. At that time, I thought things through. If they were going to force themselves on me, I would protect my cleanliness even if it meant dying. Yu Guan unconsciously began defending himself, but his voice became smaller and smaller. But my status is low, so how could I be worthy of speaking to third young sir? If not for fourth young sir not looking down on me, I would not have the right to speak with fourth young sir or young miss. There are no people who are naturally of lower status than others. I've heard fourth brother bring it up before that you had no choice but to join an acting troupe after your family was ruined and only act to eke out a living. Seeing you live here and get pushed around by those women, it's clear that you are not the same as them. When Yu Guan had been getting bullied by them, he had been able to keep himself composed, but for some reason, when he heard Yu Fu's words, tears began to well up in his eyes. This would not do. Men should not cry so easily. He could not allow Yu Fu to look down on him. He turned around to regain his composure before quickly turning back. I am just a lowly actor. If I lived on my own, it would make others feel jealous. Fourth young sir also wanted to arrange for me to live somewhere in the city, but I was worried that people in the city would notice him coming to visit me, and that would ruin his reputation. That's why I decided to come and live in this sort of place outside the city. So that was the case. It was no wonder why he did not fall so low with his position as a lead actor in his troupe. Yu Fu stood up and said, "Yu Guan, do you want to return to the manor with me right now and explain things to head general and third brother? It's possible that if you personally explain, you might be trusted a little more. More importantly, could it be that you don't hope to be accepted by them, so that you and fourth brother can meet openly in the future?" Openly? This lowly one absolutely does not dare ask for that much. This lowly one wishes to go with young Miss Yu Fu. As long as this lowly one can help reduce fourth young sir's punishment, this lowly one is willing to do anything. He turned back to look at his room and brought along his coin purse. Yu Fu said, "I came out in a hurry and did not bring anyone with me. The door to your house was broken down, so it would be best to bring along any important items to keep from losing them." Yu Guan smiled freely, "There's no need. What important matters are there? It's nothing more than some worldly possessions. I always keep the cloth that fourth young sir gave me on hand. There's nothing else of importance." In an instant, Yu Fu was moved by his words. He, the one that Jiyu Hanmo considered a lowly actor, actually viewed money as something so unimportant and was willing to abandon it all for Jiyu Wenqing's sake. Just how sincere of a friend was he? It was no wonder Jiyu Wenqing refused to give up on coming to visit him. To have one confidant in life, one can die without regrets. For fourth brother to have a friend like you is very fortunate for him. Yu Guan smiled. No, this lowly one having a friend like fourth young sir is this lowly one's good fortune. Stepping over the fallen door, the two walked out of the building and left without looking back. The entrance to the small and simple room was left open, reflecting the open mountains and cloudless sky. It just remained there, waiting for its owner's return. Has the head general and the others returned? The horse stopped in front of the manor, and Yu Fu casually asked the soldier standing out front. That person replied, They returned a quarter of an hour ago. They are now dealing with the fourth young sir at the main hall. Young miss, come in quickly. Yu Fu waved to Yu Guan, and the two entered the main hall's courtyard one after the other. The sound of the cane striking flesh was familiar and shocking. This is bad. Yu Fu immediately walked in the direction of the main hall. There, she saw Jiyu Huijiang seated at the head seat, and everyone else was present. Zun Kai and Tian Shu had probably returned to their small courtyard. When it came to the familial matters of Marquis Gu's manor, it was not convenient for them to meddle, nor did they want to meddle. Kneeling on the ground was Jiyu Wenqing, while Jiyu Hanmo was personally administering the punishment without holding back in the slightest. Hold it. Yu Fu rushed forward and saluted Jiyu Huijiang, head general. Why must fourth brother be beaten? Jiyu Huijiang heaved a sigh. He was visiting a place where shady people gather and went to learn acting rather than think about how to improve. He damaged the reputation of Marquis Gu's manor, so this is the punishment that he should bear. Yu Fu, I know that you worry about your fourth brother, but the sons of Marquis Gu's manor have always been raised in this way. He cannot be the exception. The previous time, he had let Jiyu Wenqing off without investigating further. This time, his demeanor was even more severe. Not only was Jiyu Wenqing meeting with an actor, but he was also caught in the act of learning to act by Jiyu Hanmo. As the dignified young sir of Marquis Gu's manor, how could he go and become an actor, someone who exists to entertain people? Jiyu Shubai waved to her. Yu Fu, come to eldest brother. Father only punished him with 20 strikes. It can't be considered much, and he can endure it. There's no need for you to worry. Be good and come sit. How about it? Sit around and watch fourth brother get beaten? I can't do it. Yu Fu did not even think about it and refuted Jiyu Shubai's offer, and the latter was a little shocked. This was the first time that Yu Fu had opposed him, but for some odd reason, he rejoiced. She really had grown up. She now had her own views. Yu Fu said to Jiyu Hanmo, head general, eldest brother, second brother, third brother, I brought Yu Guan with me. Please listen to his explanation before deciding on whether or not to punish fourth brother, all right? Yu Guan. Jiyu Xiong and Jiyu Yi whispered to each other. They did not think that Yu Fu would come up with such a good idea. But it did not sound too promising. Was she certain that Jiyu Hanmo would not get angry upon seeing Yu Guan? Yu Guan walked in through the door and performed a very proper salute. Jiyu Wenqing, who had remained still this entire time, finally glanced up at him. The latter gave him a reassuring look. It was the same look as when he was being taken away by Jiyu Hanmo. This humble citizen is called Yu Guan, and I am a performer in Hua Li troupe. Greetings, Lord Marquis, eldest young sir, and the other young sirs. Jiyu Huijiang had heard this name before, and he had seen perform on stage, but this was the first time that he had seen him face to face. Taking a closer look, he was a young man with delicate features. It could be a result of him playing the female parts that his face appeared needlessly caked in makeup. His long and narrow eyes were feminine, but his gaze was straightforward. It did not look like it belonged to someone engaged in shady business. The salute that he had performed earlier had been very proper, and he spoke without any sense of inferiority. For the time being, Jiyu Huijiang did not feel repulsed by him. He waited to see what he would say next. He kneeled next to Jiyu Wenqing. Lord Marquis, please reconsider and do not punish fourth young sir. It was all this lowly citizen's fault. Yu Fu let out a faint sigh and wondered to herself what was going on. Had they not agreed that neither he nor Jiyu Wenqing had done anything wrong? Why was it that he placed the blame on himself now that he was in front of Jiyu Huijiang? This could not possibly resolve the root of the problem. Yu Guan seemed to realize something and straightened his back. No, this lowly citizen did not do anything wrong. Would Lord Marquis please reconsider? This lowly citizen and fourth young sir had a pure friendship and have never done anything improper. Fourth young sir just likes poetry and opera, and this lowly citizen was willing to teach him to repay the debt of having my life saved. Aside from learning to act, this lowly citizen has not enticed him into seeing anyone improper. This is without mentioning that fourth young sir is a dignified young sir of a noble family, and even this lowly citizen feels unworthy of being his acquaintance. Ji Hanmo said, "Just by learning to act, you have caused him great harm. As the young sir of an influential family, how could he possibly learn acting? This is a lowly profession that is looked down upon by all. No, what third young sir says is wrong." Yu Guan suddenly stood up. His delicate frame endured Ji Hanmo's oppressive stare, and he did his best to remain steady. Nobody knew just how much courage he had summoned to dare to speak up in front of these people. He persisted and said, "This lowly one is an actor and am indeed of low standing, but fourth young sir is merely learning to act for fun. It is not for the sake of becoming an actor. What is there that is improper about it? Gambling is not noble, but is there anything wrong with playing some dice with family over the new year? Drinking is not noble, but what is wrong with enjoying a few drinks while celebrating a joyous matter? Killing is not tolerated by Eastern Ling's laws, but if the enemy ruler is killed on the battlefield to protect one's family and country, what wrong was committed?" Yu Guan spoke without pausing for a breath, and Yu Fu looked at him in admiration. Seeing Ji Hanmo's cold face slightly stunned, she became even happier. When it came to some biases, third brother had to change a little, otherwise, not only would it make him bitter, but it would also cause Ji Wenqing to lose his best friend. Finding a confidant was hard, and she would insist on Ji Wenqing being able to keep this friend. Ji Wenqing looked at Yu Guan in a daze. He never thought that he would see someone usually meek become so impassioned. For Yu Guan to be able to understand this, he was happier than anyone. Seeing everyone look at him in shock, Yu Guan became a little embarrassed and once again cupped his hands toward Ji Huaijiang. "This lowly citizen has been impolite. Marquis Gu's manor is full of heroes who have shed blood on the battlefield and naturally understands better than this lowly citizen. This lowly citizen should not have used that as an example. Would Lord Marquis please not take offense?" The hall fell silent. After a long pause, Ji Huaijiang spoke in a heavy voice, "It can't be helped." He initially thought that Yu Guan was a normal actor who had selfishly wanted to deceive Ji Wenqing and have Ji Wenqing to himself. Looking at him now, he knew that this was not the case. Just by looking at the way that he was dressed, with his simple yet refined clothes, and hearing the resolute tone of his voice, he knew that he was someone with integrity. In the end, Ji Wenqing was a child raised in Marquis Gu's manor. He would not stray from the proper path and become friends with people who harbored wicked thoughts. Yu Fu took advantage of this timing to speak. "Head General, I just went outside the city to fetch Yu Guan, and guess what happened? When third brother and the others went, they kicked down Yu Guan's door, and a group of girls was gathered around him and insulting him, faulting him for being too clean and being unwilling to associate with them. That group only left after I arrived. Who knows just how much Yu Guan would have suffered if I had not gone." Everyone immediately knew what sort of people those girls were upon hearing Yu Fu's words, as they had heard a bit about Yu Guan living in a shady area. Ji Hanmo furrowed his brow, then looked at Yu Guan, who was standing respectfully near the entrance to the hall. The look in his eyes no longer held any of the previous contempt. Instead, it looked a little apologetic. If not for him kicking down the door, Yu Guan would not have been subjected to such humiliation. Ji Wenqing cupped his hands and said, "Father, although Yu Guan lives in that sort of a place, he has never done that sort of thing. If that was not the case, how could son have saved his life back then?" Ji Huaijiang nodded. "Father has heard about this. There were some people who tried to force Yu Guan to do something against his principles, and that was why you saved him. This was initially a good thing, and since your conduct has been proper, Father will not stop you from continuing to visit him." Ji Wenqing was so happy that he forgot himself and looked toward Yu Guan. The latter looked to be in disbelief, but he continued to look at Ji Huaijiang with a gaze that was full of reverence. He had previously heard Ji Wenqing speak about this Marquis Ji, who knew that not only was he adept at killing enemies on the battlefield, but he was also so open-minded. Ji Huaijiang stood up and said, "It's just that the recent situation at Marquis Gu's manor has not been very stable. There have been some abnormal happenings, but they do not matter much. In the future," he looked at Yu Guan, "it's not that this general detests you, as this general finds you to have integrity and do admire you, but your status has yet to be resolved. Head General, I have an idea. Yu Fu looked at him with a smile, her eyes shining strangely. Who knew what idea she had in mind? Forget it, he would just go with it. Jiyu Huijiang helplessly shook his head. When he passed by Jiyu Hanmo's side, he patted him on the shoulder. When he left, Jiyu Hanmo tossed the cane that he held to the side, and Jiyu Yi hastily caught it. Since father has agreed, there's nothing else to say. Saying this, he left without looking back. Jiyu Yi mimicked his tone, paying great attention to detail. Since father has agreed, there's nothing else to say. Ha ha ha. Since Jiyu Hanmo had already left, Jiyu Shubai and Jiyu Juji also stood up. They never had as strong of an opinion as Jiyu Hanmo. Now that there was approval from Jiyu Huijiang and a great deal of support from Yu Fu, they were perfectly happy to grant her wish. With the older brothers and elders having already left, the younger ones were freed from needing to be restrained and immediately became lively. Jiyu Xiong patted Yu Guan's shoulder, and Yu Guan's entire body swayed, nearly sustaining an internal injury. Jiyu Xiong hastily helped support him. Apologies, we brothers have quite a bit of strength from training in martial arts, and I forgot that your body is frailer. Don't take it to heart. In truth, third brother is soft-hearted but has a sharp tongue. I can tell that he's already changed his attitude. Yu Guan gratefully waved to him. It's fine. It's just that I was too nervous earlier, so my legs are feeling a little weak. To be able to keep fourth young sir from being struck even one additional time makes me rejoice. I do not dare ask the third young sir to change. Jiyu Yi helped Jiyu wenching up from the floor. Fourth brother was caned 15 times. Third brother did not hold back in the slightest. It would be best to quickly call for an imperial physician to take a look. No, third brother did hold back. Jiyu Wenqing did not seem to be in pain, standing up on his own. If third brother really did not hold back, I would be completely unable to stand up right now. He really does have a soft heart but a sharp tongue. He looked furious, but he really could not bring himself to do it. Yu Guan had delicate skin and had never experienced such a serious injury. Upon seeing Jiyu Wenqing's injury, he was startled. His voice had changed from his nervousness. We should help him back to his room first and dress the wound, right? Yu Fu was concerned and said, Fourth brother, are you able to hold out? Don't worry, I can. Since you can, don't rush to apply the medicine. Go and visit third brother in his room first. Yu Fu's words shocked everyone. Thinking carefully, they understood the deeper meaning behind this. This was true. Jiyu Hanmo's prejudices did not form overnight. Even if he saw today that Yu Guan was not the type of person that he had imagined, he still could not change his attitude. It would be better to have Jiyu Wenqing go and advise him. Jiyu Hanmo was worried about his younger brothers and would surely be swayed. In the future, Jiyu Wenqing and Yu Guan would be able to meet without any worries. This would settle matters once and for all. Jiyu Wenqing said, Yu Fu, many thanks to you for what you have done today. If not for you, who knows how things would have ended. I will go and see third brother right now. It's just that Yu Guan, Yu Fu knew what he was worried about. Don't worry. I have already made arrangements for Yu Guan's matter. Go quickly. Jiyu Xiong shoved Jiyu Yi. What are you in a daze for? We're helping fourth brother get there. Letting him go to third brother on his own, he might get beaten to death without anyone knowing. Yu Fu burst out laughing. Jiyu Wenqing wanted to raise a hand to hit Jiyu Xiong but weakly lowered it. You two are just going to take advantage of this time while I am hurt to bully me. In a few days, it will be you guys who will suffer. Yu Guan watched the three brothers depart, and a faint smile appeared on his face. Ever since seeing the third young sir at my house, fourth young sir has been extremely uneasy. Now, he's finally smiling. This was not the end of the matter. Yu Guan's preparations were the important part. Yu Fu thought for a bit then said, Yu Guan, do you perform because you like performing, or do you do it because you have no other choice? Acting is a lowly profession. If one had a choice, who would choose to do it? I have earned a bit of money from my troupe and have considered quitting. However, I am still young and worry that I will not have enough for when I am older. That's why I don't dare quit. Yu Fu understood what he meant. If there was another choice, he would not want to be an actor. Since that's the case, why not do a small bit of business? Being a businessman is a proper job. What do you think? Yu Guan smiled bitterly. I have never done business, nor do I have the capital to do it. How could I manage? Yu Fu said, I can provide you with the capital. If you haven't done any business before, I can have the people in the manor's treasury teach you. Marquis Gu's manor has many businesses in the capital, and there are plenty of people with knowledge in various businesses. Yu Guan looked at her in a daze. He had decided that he should not cry so easily, but he could not stop the tears from welling up. But how could this lowly one be worthy of receiving this much support from young Miss Yu Fu? It's truly embarrassing. Yu Fu looked up at the sky. With everything that had happened today, it was already starting to get dark. You just need to say whether you want to or not. There's no need to think too much. Once you have earned the money, you can repay me in the future. You know that with my title and estate as a princess, I won't miss this bit of money. Yu Guan hesitated for a moment before finally nodding. He lifted the hem of his robe and dropped to his knees to give his thanks. Yu Fu personally helped him up. In the future, there's no need for such formalities. You are fourth brother's friend, thus you are also my friend. It's already late today, and your house outside the city has no door, so it can't be lived in. I will have someone accompany you back to tidy up your things. You can stay in an empty room in the manor for tonight and look for an appropriate place to stay tomorrow. Yu Guan said, there is a small place near Marquis Gu's manor that fourth young sir bought for me to live in. At that time, I refused for fear of third young sir finding out. That place can be lived in. That's even better. Guards, escort Yu Guan outside the city. Now that everything had finally been handled, Yu Fu's stomach rumbled with hunger. Holding her belly, she headed toward Zun Kai's courtyard. It was just starting to get dark, so the lanterns next to the path had not yet been lit. Yu Fu was the only person walking along the path. She quietly spoke to herself, I'll go and grab a meal and chat with Master about what happened in the palace today. I wonder if Master liked the poached chicken with sticky rice more, or if he liked the oil-drenched smoked duck more. Of course, it was the chicken. A person suddenly walked out from the side holding a glazed hydrangea lantern, which quickly illuminated the path. Yu Fu looked up and saw that it was Jiyu Shubai. He seemed to have just taken a bath and had changed into light blue clothes that he wore at home. His hair was loosely tied up with a white cloth, giving him a relaxed appearance. Getting closer, she could smell a familiar scent. How strange, this scent was really familiar, but she could not remember where she had smelled it before. Eldest brother, how did you know that Master liked the chicken? The two walked toward Zun Kai's courtyard side by side, and Jiyu Shubai said, it's because Deity of Medicine ate 2 plates of the poached chicken but only ate 1 plate of the duck. Yu Fu was surprised, but Master ate so much in the palace today. Even eunuch Gao, who was keeping his eyes on him the entire time, could not keep track of what Master ate. How can eldest brother remember so clearly? Emperor Ning was worried that Zun Kai would have a hard time digesting it all given his age, thus he had eunuch Gao keep an eye on him. If he showed any signs of being unable to digest it, he would immediately send for the imperial physicians. Eunuch Gao's eyes were sore from keeping his eyes on him for the entire day, as he watched plate after plate of meat was brought up to take the place of empty plates, but Zun Kai remained in high spirits. Not only did he not show any signs of discomfort, but he looked happier and happier the more he ate. That was why eunuch Gao slacked off toward the end. What struggles with digestion? If a normal person ate this much, they would have died from being bloated. Zun Kai did not die, which meant that he would not have trouble with digestion. When it came to an immortal's matters, there was no need for him to worry. Jiyu Shubai smiled with a bit of delight. A day as a master is like a life as a father. To try and curry favor with my great father-in-law is something that I should do. How could I not pay attention to these small matters? All right, this son-in-law paid more attention than her, the daughter. Yu Fu smirked, and the two slowly walked along the dark path with their lantern. The faint scent from his body continued to remain in her nose. A subtle fragrance floats under the moon at dusk. Yu Fu suddenly remembered this line of poetry and was shocked to remember what the scent was. Eldest brother, you used my bath beans? Was this not the smell of her bath beans? Last time, Kuan Wushong had brought her a box, and there was just that one box. It was the smell of Immortals Valley. After that, the second prince also had people bring some, but the smell was wrong, thus she gave them to Su Yunyang. Jiyu Shubai said, Deity of medicine and Tian Shu know that you like the smell of these bath beans and brought you a lot this time. You will be able to use them for quite some time. I used the ones that Kuan Wushong brought last time. You aren't allowed to use those anymore. Yu Fu used the ones sent by Kuan Wushong when she bathed, allowing her skin to be touched by something given by Kuan Wushong. No matter how he thought about it, it felt inappropriate, so it was best to take it away as soon as possible. Yu Fu's little face instantly turned red. He had actually used her leftover bath beans. Right, I heard that you directed someone to bring Yu Guan back to live inside the city. Jiyu Shubai recalled the day's events and could not help but smile. I never knew that our Yu Fu was so capable and would be able to resolve a difficult situation with just a few moves. If it had been him, today's problem might not have been resolved so easily. Yu Fu was only 13 years old, yet she was already very bold and decisive. Everyone said that it was as if she was truly Jiyu Huijiang's daughter, but Jiyu Shubai did not agree, feeling that Yu Fu had not shown all of her cards. If she grew up, she would surely soar to great heights with the wind. Princess Danyang often said that Yu Fu was not worthy of him, but what he feared the most was that there would come a day when he would not be worthy of Yu Fu. Eldest brother, what are you thinking about? Yu Fu tugged at his sleeve. Did you hear what I just said? What do you think my arrangements for Yu Guan? Jiyu Shubai returned to the present and gently smiled. They are indeed good, but how could you give him your own money to serve as capital? Why not? Your money is part of your dowry. In the future, you will need to bring it with you when you marry me. How can it be used so carelessly? Very well, he was going to take this chance to make fun of her. Jiyu Shubai continued, it would have been better to give him my money. Yu Fu was confused and said, going by what eldest brother said, what difference is there between your money and my money? Are they not the same? That's right. Jiyu Shubai quietly chuckled. He kept his voice down, but it sounded very nice. All of my belongings are yours. That's why you can use them as you like. Yu Fu froze, as her hand was suddenly held tight. The warmth of his palms seemed to be able to melt the snow and ice. She flipped her hand over and held his hand. The two quietly continued along, with the darkness following behind them. One tall and one short, the two shadows stretched out quite a distance. Zun Kai was in the middle of eating his dinner, holding a chicken leg and eating it with vigor. Tian Shu had already finished eating and was sipping tea off to the side, waiting to tidy up the bowls and chopsticks. Suddenly, he saw Zun Kai raise his head. Prepare 2 more bowls and chopsticks. Going by the sound of their footsteps, they have come empty-handed and on an empty stomach. Mph. He did not mind that Yu Fu had come on an empty stomach, but he quite minded the other one. This in spite of the fact that he was eating food provided by Marquis Gu's manor. Who came? Tian Shu looked out at the courtyard but did not see anyone. It was one thing for Master to hear footsteps from such a distance, but that he could tell what they were holding and the state of their stomachs. Understood, I will go immediately. A long while after the bowls and chopsticks were brought out, Tian Shu was finally able to hear footsteps. One set seemed to belong to Yu Fu. Not long later, 2 figures appeared outside the courtyard's entrance. One was Yu Fu, and the other was Jiyu Shubai. Yu Fu, I heard about everything that happened earlier. You did very well. Tian Shu led them inside, and Yu Fu winked at him. It was a result of Master's teaching me well. Jiyu Shubai immediately saw the bowls and chopsticks laid out on the table, and Zun Kai continued to eat. Don't flatter, Master. The bowl and plate have been prepared for quite some time. Are you worried that Master won't let you eat? Hihi, of course, I'm not worried that Master won't let me eat. She was worried that her master would not let Jiyu Shubai eat. Yu Fu cheerfully pulled Jiyu Shubai over to sit down. New dishes had just been brought out, and a male servant stepped forward to remove the lid from the plate. A fragrant smell filled the air. Jiyu Shubai looked over the dishes on the table, then said, "The poached chicken at today's banquet was extremely good, and this one of the younger generation asked the Imperial Kitchen to write down the recipe. The cooks in the manor will be able to prepare them starting tomorrow. At that time, I will personally bring it over and ask Deity of Medicine to have a taste." Poached chicken with sticky rice? Hidden beneath Zun Kai's long eyebrows, his eyes suddenly lit up. This brat was quite reliable, knowing to be filial to the elderly. Tian Shu heard this and immediately knew that it was something that Zun Kai liked. For Jiyu Shubai to go and ask the Imperial Kitchen for the recipe, such dedication was hard to come by. He lifted his sword and said, "I'm done eating and am going to go and look for your third brother to train. Master, enjoy your meal." For some reason, when the three of them sat together, it was surprisingly harmonious, as if they were family, while he had become the outsider. Thus he simply decided to leave and avoid becoming an eyesore. Having eaten his fill, Zun Kai suddenly said, "Though I was quite reluctant, your engagement has been decided. Marquis Jiyu and Emperor Ning are both healthy, so it is time for your senior disciple brother and me to leave." "What? Why is Master in such a rush to leave? Can you not stay for a little while longer?" Yu Fu urgently tried to persuade him to stay. Zun Kai clearly liked Eastern Ling, especially the local architecture and customs. Of course, the great food was even more important. She thought that this would make Zun Kai so happy that he would forget about home, but who knew that he would bring up leaving so soon? Zun Kai's beard trembled, and he snuck a glance at Jiyu Shubai. "Master also wants to keep you company for a little while longer and teach you some more poisons. Unfortunately, Eastern Ling will be going to war, and it's inconvenient for Master to stay here." "War?" Zun Kai's words were clearly not just random nonsense, and Jiyu Shubai's heart chilled, as he immediately lowered his chopsticks. "May I ask Deity of Medicine to tell us, what war are you talking about?" Eastern Ling was peaceful and auspicious. Emperor Ning had already recovered from his illness, and the situation in court was stable, so where would a war come from? Zun Kai said, "I am talking about the border. If Western Kuan and Eastern Ling start fighting, it will get in the way of my return to Immortals Valley. Naturally, it does not matter to me, but your second senior disciple is just a mortal. Moreover, I can't quite get used to seeing the flames of war." Chapter 217 Princess and Family, Part 4. As he said this, he waved his hand in front of his nose with a look of great disdain. Jiyu Shubai furrowed his brow and said, "Western Kuan is ambitious and has always coveted our Eastern Ling's border region. Sure enough, them sending people as a peaceful envoy had a hidden objective. But how is it that you know that they will take up arms?" Zun Kai snorted, "Heaven's secrets must not be exposed. You just need to know that I wouldn't lie to you. With that, things have been decided. In 3 days, we will be returning to Immortals Valley." Yu Fu tugged on his sleeve beneath the table, and Jiyu Shubai quickly recovered. Zun Kai had deliberately revealed that there would be a war to allow them some time to prepare. The Deity of Medicine truly said that. "Father, that is indeed the case." In the main hall, Jiyu Shubai relayed what Zun Kai had said to Jiyu Huijiang, and the latter fell deep into thought for a prolonged period of time. With his outer clothes draped on his shoulders, he paced back and forth for a long time. This is bad. When Western Kuan's special envoy came last time, Kuan Wushong did a number of improper things, so the court has been a bit more vigilant. But a few days earlier, Western Kuan's special envoy sent a letter of credence, saying that it was for the sake of repairing relations between the two countries and that they specially sent a princess to solidify relations through marriage. His Majesty was absolutely elated. The princess is already on her way. If I say that Western Kuan will launch an attack on our border at a time like this, who would believe it? Does father not believe what Deity of Medicine said? That's not the case. Jiyu Huijiang said, Deity of Medicine is very certain, so it can't be fake. Also, whether it's him allowing Tian Shu to teach his unique training methods to the members of the manor, or him accepting the engagement between you and Yu Fu, or him helping treat His Majesty's poisoning, he has done plenty to prove that he has been helping us this entire time. Today's words are also no exception. Jiyu Shubai nodded and said, Sun also thinks this way. It's just that if the court members truly believe that Western Kuan wants reconciliation, there's no way for us to reinforce the border with more troops. If that's the case, there's nothing that we can do with this information. Jiyu Huaijiang let out a long sigh. It's one thing with the members of court, but His Majesty is the more important. He wholeheartedly hopes for Western Kuan and Eastern Ling to be on peaceful terms and does not want to see the flames of war burn once more. Without proof of Western Kuan deploying troops brought before him, he will not allow us to deploy troops first. He thought for a bit, then quickly said, How about this? Order the border guards to keep a close eye on Western Kuan's movements. As soon as they feel that something is off, immediately send a report back with haste. Yes, Father. That night, Jiyu Huaijiang and Jiyu Shubai were unable to sleep soundly. On the battlefield, in just a split second, blood could flow like a river, as the corpses of civilians and soldiers piled up like mountains. They did not dare be negligent in the slightest, as they constantly thought about the situation at the border and which city they would counterattack from. This continued until the sun came up. Jiyu Huaijiang was getting old and could not fight off the need to close his eyes. Jiyu Shubai, however, opened his eyes and lifted his blanket, walking out of his courtyard while it was still early in the morning and seeing the sun rise above the treetops. It was bright but not so much that it was dazzling. It was warm but not too hot. This was true of the morning sun, and it was true of Eastern Ling, as it would continue to steadily prosper. He stretched his arms and suddenly saw a figure leaning back at the top of a tree. They also seemed to be looking at the scenery of the rising sun. Looking more closely, it looked like Jiyu Hanmo's figure. Third brother? The person at the top of the tree turned his head. Eldest brother, why have you woken up so early? Jiyu Hanmo descended the tree in a blur and landed next to him. The area under his eyes was faintly bruised. Jiyu Shubai wanted to point this out, but Jiyu Hanmo said, Eldest brother, the area under your eyes is bruised. Did you not sleep well last night? He said. Fourth brother came to plead for forgiveness yesterday before getting his injuries treated. He said a lot and said that Yu Guan is a good friend. He said that they benefit a great deal from their interactions. Eldest brother, do you know what I was thinking about? What is it? I was thinking that I don't have any friends, so I don't understand his feelings. Jiyu Shubai looked at him in shock, never thinking that he would say such a thing. It seemed to be full of regret and jealousy. Jealousy. He had always placed all of his focus on training and treated family warmly with a cold expression. He also had no outside friends. Jiyu Shubai always thought that he did not need friends, otherwise, given his status, there would be plenty of people who would want to be friends with him. It turned out, he also wanted to have friends. Jiyu Shubai had helped Jiyu Huaijiang raise his younger brothers for many years, and this was the first time that he did not know what to say to console Jiyu Hanmo. After a long pause, he finally said, No, you have a friend. Isn't Tian Shu your friend? Chapter 218 She Really Was a Princess, Part 5. First thing in the morning at the government office of Linen, a din of discontent filled the air. Situated in the capital and directly under the emperor's nose, the government office was rarely ever lively, so why was there such a loud fuss today? Prefect 11 Men Sheng, who lived in the rear courtyard of the government office, put on his official clothes while ordering a subordinate to go out and take a look at the situation. Not long later, the attendant came back to report, replying to Lord Prefect, there are 2 women wanting to file a complaint. Some women want to file a complaint. The women of my Eastern Ling have always placed emphasis on remaining composed. Since a woman dared to come and file a complaint, it must be some big case. Quickly open the court. 11 Men Sheng hastily rushed toward the courtroom, but the attendant stopped him and said, My lord, please do not rush. Those 2 women look extremely familiar. This lowly one was afraid of making a mistake and asked a few questions. Sure enough, they are from the brothel outside the city. Brothel? 11 Men Sheng furrowed his brow and hesitated for a moment. Prostitution is already considered illegal. Do they themselves not know this? If this official questions them about it in court, regardless of what complaints they might have, they will also be punished. If that's the case, it would be better for you to have them quickly leave. The attendant said with a bit of difficulty. This lowly one also said this, but the two of them refused to leave. They said that their caretaker is abducting young girls and forcing them into slavery. My lord, should this be tried or not? 11 men Sheng had already decided to go back but stopped upon hearing mention of slavery. If people being pressed into slavery is truly happening under the ruler's nose, this official will definitely need to perform a proper trial. Come, let's go and take a look. Order. The attendants stood on both sides of the room and held their long clubs, forcefully slamming them on the ground. This scared the two women from entering the courtroom. Sneakily glancing up, they saw a large board hung at the head of the hall with a lord wearing a brocade robe. To the two sides, there were people holding large signs. The one on the left read silence and the one on the right read recuse. Who is entering the courtroom? What is your grievance? Quickly come in and report. The gavel slammed down, and the two people held each other in fear while slowly entering the courtroom. The two kneeled near the entrance of the hall. One was beautiful and charming, while the other looked gentle but troubled, and both were dressed in flowing dresses. It was immediately clear that they were not women from upright families. 11 men Sheng furrowed his brow and slammed his gavel once more. Impudence. At your age, you are no longer young girls. How can you come and voice grievances of young girls being abducted? The charming woman said, replying to my lord, we were indeed abducted. She was abducted when she was 12, and I was abducted when I was 11. The other woman pulled out 2 unknown items from her sleeve and brought them up with both hands. Yesterday, a noble person said that my lord would know how to handle things upon seeing these. 11 men Sheng stood up and looked down. He saw that she was holding a small piece of gold and a silver needle. The piece of gold was finer than what he usually saw. He did not even have something this fine at his private residence. It seemed that they truly did meet a noble person. As for that silver needle, he felt that it was extremely familiar but did not know what it was. Noble person? Speak clearly. What exactly happened? 1 hour later, the personal assistant hastily led a group of attendants out of the government office. They were headed in the direction of the palace. The people who lived there were all of exceptional nobility. Were they going there to catch a thief or something? The soldier said, replying to young Miss, based on what the assistant said, the old woman that was struck by young Miss Poison Needle was sent to the medical clinic. She has already been given medicine and is unconscious. They left and went to the government office while she was unconscious. They were hoping that the old woman could be brought to justice. Yu Fu clapped. This is even better. I thought that the two of them would refuse to save that old woman to get revenge, but it seems that the two of them have kindness in their hearts. Here, go tell the assistant. The assistant hastily rushed back from Marquis Gu's manor. The two women were still kneeling in the middle of the courtroom and were a little panicked. He whispered into 11 men Sheng's ear, and 11 men Sheng quickly sat up with reverence, repeatedly nodding and tossing a signed stick down. Guards, quickly go and capture that old woman who has been abducting girls and lock her in prison. As for the two of you, Shi Mensheng stood up and walked down, personally handing the piece of gold and silver needle to the women. You two are lucky to have met Princess Zhenjiang. Princess is sympathetic. From here on, you will no longer need to work in a brothel. She really was Princess Zhenjiang? The two women exchanged a look, smiling so joyfully that tears spilled forth. The previous night, they had heard the girls that lived nearby say that a girl claiming to be Princess Zhenjiang had appeared at Yu Guan's residence and taken him away. It turned out that she really was a princess. Chapter 219 He is even prettier than a woman, Part 1. This one of the younger generation wanted to have deity of medicine stay for a bit longer, but now that war is on the horizon, I do not dare ask you to stay longer for fear of something happening. After 3 days passed, Zun Kai and Tian Shu were about to leave Marquis Gu's manor, and Jiyu Huijiang went out to send them off. He waved his hand, gesturing to the 2 carriages parked outside, The carriage in the back is full of luggage and has all kinds of my Eastern Ling specialties. There are also foods that you like eating. I hope that deity of medicine does not dislike them. The entire carriage was filled with food. Zun Kai's eyes shone brightly. Very well, there's no need to be so reserved. Yu Fu, Master left 2 medical books for you. You need to study them carefully. Your studies must not be neglected. If there's anything that you don't understand, send a letter back to ask Master. Do you understand? I understand, Master. Zun Kai nodded his head in satisfaction before turning to Jiyu Shubai and instantly becoming rude. You need to properly train your martial arts. Look at you. Your martial ability is so mediocre and is merely a bit better than your younger brothers. If you don't train properly, how will you be able to protect Yu Fu? He said that. Jiyu Shubai was not training properly. Jiyu Yi grimaced and thought to himself that if Jiyu Shubai was not training properly, he would have been buried alive by Jiyu Huijiang. Not to mention the fact that Jiyu Shubai was the strongest in the manor, but there were not many in all of Eastern Ling who were on his level. Even Jiyu Huijiang would say that the student has surpassed the master. The deity of medicine's words were just to get revenge for a personal vendetta. He still hated that eldest brother had stolen his beloved flower. Jiyu Shubai modestly lowered his head and saluted. Yes, this one of the younger generation will respect this lesson and will definitely train more to protect Yu Fu. Him being strong was one thing, but he also had mental fortitude. No matter how Zun Kai tried to provoke him, Jiyu Shubai would not fight him directly. He would just modestly accept it, making it very difficult for him to get mad. Jiyu Yi hid behind Jiyu Shubai and thought to himself that this would be a good way of dealing with Madame Su if she decided to mess with him in the future. Zun Kai snorted and turned to leave, when he suddenly heard, "Hold on!" Jiyu Hanmo came out through the gate and walked toward Tian Shu. Zun Kai climbed into the carriage first, as Jiyu Hanmo faced Tian Shu without saying anything. This left Tian Shu completely confused. What was he doing? Why was he not saying anything? Jiyu Hanmo summoned his courage and took a deep breath. Tian Shu, I have something to say to you. What is it? If you like your senior disciple sister, no, senior disciple brother, just keep doing your best. Don't concern yourself with what others think. Tian Shu's eyes nearly fell out of his head. What are you saying? Did Jiyu Hanmo not absolutely detest cross-dressing men and men who liked other men? How could he have changed so suddenly? Everyone behind him heard what they were talking about, and they were just as confused. Only Jiyu Shubai was smiling brightly. Father, let's all go back in first and let the 2 of them say their farewells. Once this was said, everyone left. Jiyu Wenqing walked over to Jiyu Shubai's side and asked out of curiosity, "Eldest brother, you know why third brother would say that sort of thing, right?" Jiyu Hanmo's words relating to not hating crossdressers, did that mean that he did not hate Yu Guan and would not oppose Jiyu Wenqing acting? It's fine. What you said is what normal people think. I understand. But as a friend, I am happier to have your support. You have no idea. But those in Immortals Valley who dare to say anything about senior disciple sister have already been beaten by me to the point that they don't dare to say anything. The word friend landed on Jiyu Hanmo's heart and instantly warmed it. He could not stop himself from smiling. It turned out that Tian Shu also thought of him as a friend. That was why he did not hit him when he had expressed his disapproval. Not only did he not hit him, but he even helped him resolve the matter with Jiyu Wenqing. It turned out that this was what it was like to have friends. They were as tolerant as the elders and as accepting as younger brothers. It was also a little different from being brothers. Tian Shu patted him on the shoulder the same way that Jiyu Shubai did. In truth, the one you should apologize to is your 4th brother. He was given a beating and is quite miserable. Moreover, he wasn't playing at being an actor, nor does he like men. Your attitude was a little too much. Jiyu Hanmo quietly nodded, and Tian Shu smiled, turning around and walking toward the carriage. He seemed to suddenly remember something and turned back to shout to Jiyu Hanmo, "When there's a chance in the future, I'll let you meet my senior disciple sister. He's even more beautiful than all women. He's not some pervert who just likes to cross-dress." Chapter 220 It turned out he was pretending. Part 2. The carriage left Linen City, and there were a pair of imperial carriages waiting outside. The old driver saw this from quite far away and reported inside, "Deity of medicine, there are some members of the imperial family waiting up ahead. Do you wish to give them some face?" Zun Kai seemed to be chewing on something, and the words that he said were not very clear. Is this how Jiu Huijiang does things? Didn't I tell him that I would be leaving in secret and that he should not tell Emperor Ning? What a waste of time. Just pretend that you didn't see them and go around. The old servant was very experienced. Previously, he had maintained a good posture and had his chest puffed out. It was very clear that the passengers in the carriage were not normal people. Now, he was hunched over and kept his shoulders slumped. He now had a stupid look on his face, and he pretended to have no strength in his hands. Anyone who saw this would think that this carriage did not have anyone of importance. It was simply a poor person who had no money to request a driver with more vigor. "Lord Deity of Medicine, please wait." When passing by the imperial carriages, a female voice came from inside the carriage. Zun Kai's eyebrow slightly raised and thought to himself that this person was not someone that the driver could deal with on his own, thus he nudged Tian Shu with his elbow. "You go and get rid of her." Tian Shu obediently climbed out of the carriage and saw a girl wearing exquisite clothing standing outside of the carriage with a large cloak that covered her face. "Deity of medicine, do you still remember this one?" They had met once in Marquis Gu's manor. At that time, eunuch Gao had been instructed to invite Zun Kai into the palace to treat the emperor, and she had tried to stop him because of the promise to confer Yu Fu the title of princess. Tian Shu had a blank expression and slightly bowed. "Princess Danyang." The round face hidden by the cloak looked up. She wore a dignified and refined smile, as she pointed at a pavilion nearby. "Would Deity of Medicine please stay and chat for a while?" "There's no need. I don't like idle talk." Princess Danyang knew that this person would act as he wished, actually daring to enter Emperor Ning's chambers without removing his sword, thus it was natural that he would dare to not give face to a princess. She did not get frustrated and looked over at the carriage that Zun Kai sat in. "It's not idle talk. It's an important matter. If Immortal Practitioner of Medicine is unwilling for fear of being delayed, my father Emperor wants to dispatch all of his civil and military officials to send Deity of Medicine off. When that happens, I fear that Deity of Medicine will be even more displeased." She was using this to threaten him. Tian Shu furrowed his brow and looked at her sideways before walking toward the pavilion. They were the only two people at the pavilion, thus Princess Danyang spoke without any reservations. "When this one heard that Deity of Medicine and Immortal Practitioner of Medicine were leaving, I refused to believe it. Who knew that it would end up being true? Since Immortal Practitioner of Medicine is leaving like this, what about Yu Fu? Heard that they were leaving?" Not even Emperor Ning had heard this news, so where did a princess like her hear this news? Tian Shu plainly responded, "Yu Fu?" "That's right." Princess Danyang would not forget that scene in front of Emperor Ning's bedchamber. The lofty Jiu Shubai whom she admired was competing with Tian Shu like a normal person for Yu Fu. She had always thought that Yu Fu was trying to climb up the social ladder with Jiu Shubai, but this ended up with her taking a slap to the face. Doesn't Immortal Practitioner of Medicine love Yu Fu? If you leave just like this, wouldn't it just be the same as giving up and giving her to Brother Shubai? Are you really fine with that?" A smile flitted through his eyes, finally understanding why Princess Danyang had come to seek him out. It seemed that his acting was too good, and Princess Danyang truly believed that he liked Yu Fu and wanted to compete with Jiu Shubai for her. Eastern Ling's second prince. The memory of him kneeling in front of Zun Kai and pleading for him to go into the palace to treat Emperor Ning appeared in Tian Shu's mind. Being able to adjust to the situation to accomplish his goals, that person had some ability. Tian Shu suddenly sneered, "Then just let her be given to the second prince. I fear that even if I am willing to allow it, the second prince might not be so fortunate." After saying this, he turned around and left the pavilion without saluting her. Princess Danyang stood in place and was beyond confused. Did he not like Yu Fu? How could he give up so easily? Zun Kai's carriage continued to advance, and the imperial carriages did not dare stop them without orders from Princess Danyang. They had no choice but to salute and send off the deity of medicine. The spring breeze was a little chilly, and Princess Danyang suddenly shuddered. It turned out that they were putting on an act. Chapter 221 An eldest sister-in-law is like a mother, Part 3. Ever since the palace's spring banquet, when Jiyu Shubai and Yu Fu's engagement was made official, it was as if Jiyu Juji had become a completely different person. Little Yu Fu, I think second brother is completely heartbroken. He doesn't even drink his beloved wine. A few days ago, the palace sent over some of His Majesty's personal supply of vintage wine, and father gave it all to second brother, but second brother returned it all without even opening them. Jiyu Xiong and Jiyu Yi were holding kites, as they led Yu Fu around the manor in search of an open area to release them. In the end, they chose the martial arts training area. The area was large enough. No matter how poor Jiyu Yi was at getting a kite to fly, it would not affect the other two. Jiyu Yi whispered into Yu Fu's ear while walking, and Jiyu Xiong said, "Don't spout so much nonsense. It's not like second brother stopped drinking wine just now. Second brother stopped drinking wine after coming back from Changju." Jiyu Yi was unwilling to let it go and said, "And wasn't that for little Yu Fu? Now, it's gone even further. Not only does second brother not drink wine, but he also doesn't even go out and hasn't even gone to visit any of the usual girls. The day before yesterday, I heard people outside say that Miss Yarrow Yu's doors have closed, and she is no longer allowing guests in to listen to her pipa performances. Why has she closed her doors?" Yu Fu finally spoke but did not ask about Jiyu Juji. She asked about Yarrow Yu. Jiyu Yi scratched his head. It seems that she has been overly hurt from not being able to see second brother and no longer wants to accept guests. There's no need for you to worry. Miss Yarrow Yu's pipa skill is very good, and she has saved quite a bit of money over the years. She won't starve from closing her doors to guests. Yu Fu nodded. Yarrow Yu was an affectionate and loyal girl. It would not be good if something happened to her because of Jiyu Juji. Jiyu Xiong glanced at Yu Fu. "Little Yu Fu, are you not at all worried about second brother?" Yu Fu received her kite from Jiyu Xiong. It was in the shape of a large white dog. It was the same as the large white dog lantern from the previous month's festival. The only difference was that this had been made by hand for her by Jiyu Wenqing. He said that it was to thank her for helping resolve the matter with Yu Guan. Yu Guan's restaurant had already opened. It was in a nice location with a great storefront. With him acting as the face of the restaurant acting as the manager, large crowds quickly began to gather around. Yu Fu also sent the two girls whom she had saved from the brothel to help Yu Guan. If anyone felt sleepy, someone would deliver them a pillow. The two girls had grown accustomed to doing business that required taking care of guests. They were both proficient in bringing guests in and taking care of them, which was very helpful to Yu Guan. Yu Fu pulled out the tail that was tucked between the dog's legs and straightened it out, mindlessly saying, "I am worried. An eldest sister-in-law is like a mother. Should I go and make some soup to comfort second brother?" PFT. Jiyu Xiong coughed up a mouthful of blood upon hearing her answer. Suddenly, they saw Jiyu Shubai walk over with Jiyu Hanmo. Both of them were smiling. Hold on, both of them? Recently, it was not just second brother who had changed drastically. Third brother had also changed quite a bit, as he was much gentler with others. Now, he was actually smiling. "You guys are flying kites. We were just about to." Jiyu Yi timidly glanced at Jiyu Hanmo. "Eldest brother, third brother, you two came to train, right? Then we'll go somewhere else." Why had they chosen to come to the martial arts training area when they clearly knew that Jiyu Hanmo spent his days training here? Were they not just asking to be scolded? Jiyu Hanmo smiled a little stiffly. "It's fine. I'll accompany you guys." Everyone looked at him in shock. It was already a blessing that he did not chase them off, yet he actually said that he would keep the company while they flew their kites. The sun had risen from the west once again. Jiyu Hanmo did not say anything else. Taking the kite from Jiyu Yi, he lifted his chin. "You go over there and hold the string. Let go of the string when you feel a bit of pull on the string. Do you understand?" So that's what happened. Little Yu Fu's kite is already in the air. Eldest brother, give me a hand. On the long road toward the palace, there was a 3-story building on the corner of the street that was tidy and refined. It could not be considered large, but it was a new shop, and the rarest part was that the shopkeeper was previously the lead actor in Hua Li troupe. Quite a few people came out of curiosity. They wanted to see how handsome this person was. It was inevitable that there would also be some with wicked intentions. Arriving on location, however, nobody dared to do anything. Did you see the sign on Yushan building? Which great master do you think came up with the name? It was Princess Junjiang herself who came up with it. Ah, an actor like that Yu Guan really has quite a bit of reputation to be able to move Princess Junjiang. Ha, what reputation does he have? I'll make it clear to you that this Yushan building is actually one of Princess Junjiang's businesses. He, Yu Guan, is nothing more than someone who was brought in to work as a shopkeeper. Gu Juji and Gu Wenqing listened to the conversation taking place outside and declined to comment, going straight inside. Not long later, a small red carriage stopped in front of Yushan building, and a girl wrapped in a purple cloak quickly walked inside. Did you know that if they had a more proper upbringing, it's likely that they would rush to your manor and devote themselves to you? Gu Wenqing understood what he was saying and said, "Aren't I just hoping that they will be able to properly help you?" Alright, let's not talk about that. Fourth young sir, you heard the idea that I brought up earlier. What do you think? The guests downstairs knew that Gu Wenqing had come, which affirmed their beliefs that Yushan building was one of Princess Junjiang's businesses. Who was there that did not know that the young sirs of Marquis Gu's manor doted on their little sister? Personally coming out to show their support for her business could be considered routine. Nobody noticed a girl covered in a cloak climb up to the 3rd floor. Second young sir? At the private room, the girl dressed in purple stood outside and gently called out, "Come in." A light flashed through Jiu Joga's eyes. Picking up his cup, he feigned carelessness and said, "Young Miss Yin's parents are no longer around, and your only elder brother holds the lofty position of Prime Minister. It's certain that he will be negligent in caring for you. You have a gentle and quiet personality, but you should occasionally be a little strict with your servants to keep them from being negligent in caring for you." How could the servants dare to be negligent in caring for me? Yin Jiao nearly blurted something out, but she bit her lip. She had been moved by Jiu Joga's concern for her. It was only at the spring banquet when she had ignored Yin Shuo and put on a performance that the people of the capital knew that a young Miss Yin existed. However, Yin Shuo no longer treated her well. Not to mention the outer study, she was not even allowed to set foot outside. The manor's servants were very adept at knowing who provided for the family. Now that the Prime Minister's manor was under Yin Shuo's control, if he did not treat Yin Jiao well, the servants were all too happy to slack off and neglect her. Yin Jiao could not stomach having nothing to eat but radishes and lettuce for every meal, thus she grew thinner and thinner with each passing day. If not for Jiu Juji inviting her out today, it was likely that Yin Shuo would not have allowed her to go out. Despite clearly seeing Yin Jiao become so thin, when she was about to go out, Yin Shuo only coldly said, "When you see Jiu Juji, you need to know your boundaries. Inquiring about Yu Fu's identity is your mission. Don't go thinking about anything else." At that instant, she had a strong feeling that if she did not obey this time, Yin Shuo would not show any mercy. He might even have her killed. Chapter 223 Enraptured, Part 5. Jiu Juji smiled and poured some tea into her cup but did not ask her anything. The less he pursued, the more likely she was to take the initiative to say something. On the other hand, pressing her would likely have the opposite effect. Seeing Yin Jiao bite her lip and remain silent for some time, Jiu Juji changed the subject. "Many things have happened at the manor recently, and I have decided to stop drinking wine. As a result, I will trouble young Miss Yin with accompanying me in drinking tea." "Why is that?" Yin Jiao immediately regretted asking. What other reason could there be? It was obvious with just a bit of thought. It must be because of Yu Fu's engagement to Jiyu Shubai. Yin Jiaro wanted to hear what he thought. When it comes to the engagement between the eldest young sir and Princess Zhenjiang, I have not yet congratulated second young sir. Since it was a joyous occasion, I thought that second young sir had invited me out to a restaurant to drink wine, but it turns out that this was not the case. Jiyu Juji paused for a moment, then suddenly laughed. If I wanted to drink wine, I would not have sought out young Miss Yin. Young Miss Yin is gentle and refined like this fragrant cup of tea. If I wanted to drink wine, I would definitely go boating on the river and invite some performers to play the pipa. Would it not be great to enjoy that and get drunk until the sun came up? Then why not do that? I've quit. Drinking too much wine gets tiresome. In the end, tea is best. Yin Jiao's face turned red. His words meant that with other girls, he drank wine, but he only drank tea with her. Yin Jiao lowered her head and looked down at the tea in the cup. The fragrance of this tea was truly uncommon. Even she had not drank it before. She lifted the cup and tasted it, saying with uncertainty, "This is the tea that the palace just gave out, isn't it? I haven't had any before, so I don't know if my guess is right or not." As expected, young Miss Yin has good tastes. This was given to Yu Fu by His Majesty. He said that though she does not live in the palace, of the offerings to the palace, one portion goes to Princess Danyang, and another goes to her. Thus he specially dispatched a group to deliver the tea to the manor. Since father also received some tea from His Majesty, Yu Fu sent the excess to this restaurant to be served to the guests. Even the best teas served in the other restaurants could not compare with the tea that had come from the palace. In an instant, Yushan Building had distinguished itself. Yin Jiao sighed to herself. It was hard to see, but Yu Fu was actually quite skilled in doing business. She really was someone with many talents. Both clever and intelligent, it was no wonder Jiyu Juji would like her. It turned out to be like that. Sure enough, His Majesty favors Lord Marquis Jiyu. In the past, the difference between the general's manor and the prime minister's manor was not this great, but now, His Majesty's favor for Lord Marquis Jiyu is even greater than before. Thinking about it, it can't be completely unrelated to the appearance of the deity of medicine. Even I was shocked upon hearing it. Who knew that even with Lord Marquis Jiyu occupying such a lofty position, he would still work so tirelessly for His Majesty? Jiyu Juji apologetically said, "My father has always been like this. It's just that everyone else always thinks that people with great power will naturally be arrogant. As for the Prime Minister's manor, the former Prime Minister is no longer in the capital, and your elder brother is from the younger generation. It's natural that he would not be shown as much consideration as the older officials. Things will get better with time." No. For some reason, a feeling of joy welled up in Yin Jiao's chest. I greatly admire Lord Marquis Gu's conduct. As for my eldest brother, he's just a young person and should never be compared with Lord Marquis Jiyu. Jiyu Juji lowered his head and took a sip of tea and thought to himself that his guess had been correct. There was some sort of disagreement between brother and sister. If that was not the case, no matter how busy Yin Shuo was, it was impossible for Yin Jiao to have become this thin without asking any questions. Your elder brother, as Prime Minister, handles court matters very appropriately. I just think quite poorly of him. To not even be able to take care of his younger sister, is that not completely letting down the former Prime Minister? Yin Jiao lowered her gaze, and a tearful look appeared. How could we all be as fortunate as Princess Xinjiang and have such a great father, or be so lucky as to have loving older brothers? If Yu Fu was born to our mother, we would love her even more. Yin Jiao's hands trembled, accidentally dropping the cup of tea on the floor. The freshly brewed tea spilled onto the floor was a vibrant green. Yin Jiao bent over to tidy it up. What a pity. Such a good cup of tea was knocked over by me before it could be savored. At the very least, in her lifetime, there had never been someone who had treated her this well. There was clearly no relationship between her and Jiyu Juji. She had merely been sent to get close to Jiyu Juji, so even if she got hurt, it should be her brother who doted on her. Unfortunately, Yin Shuo definitely would not. She could believe that if Yin Shuo had seen that earlier scene, he would definitely coldly watch her cut her hand then mockingly look at her. Only Jiu Juji would scold her, grabbing her hand and move it away. Jiu Juji was shocked but quickly smiled and said, "Silly girl, don't worry about objects. I'll have Yu Guan pack up some tea for you to bring back. You can slowly enjoy it then." Yin Jiao smiled through her tears, "You're the silly one. It's not because I'm worried about the tea." In an instant, she had forgotten all about Yin Shuo's warning. Looking at Jiu Joga's tender eyes, her body gave out, and she fell into them. Chapter 224 The Second Prince Sends a Gift, Part 1, Servants, deliver the gifts that this prince chose to Marquis Gu's manor and the Prime Minister's manor. In the second prince's manor, the second prince had been neglected by Emperor Ning for such a long time that he could focus his anger in his spare time, but he devoted his efforts to something else. Being ignored by Emperor Ning was not a big deal. In any case, he was not the only one being ignored. The eldest prince would enter the palace under the pretense of visiting imperial consort Xian, yet he was not able to see Emperor Ning even once. Everyone was being treated coldly, so why should he worry? However, Princess Danyang's engagement was something to celebrate. He knew that Emperor Ning did not plan to use this to help improve the relationship with Yin Shuo, but Princess Danyang was his younger sister born from the same mother. As a result, it would be natural for Yin Shuo's side to favor him. "Yes, Your Highness." A servant stepped forward and took a look. The two gifts were particularly plentiful, and they had been handpicked by the second prince. It was clear just how important he attached to this. He was puzzled and said, "Your Highness, which one is for Marquis Gu's manor, and which one is for the Prime Minister's manor?" The second prince pointed at the sandalwood box on the left. "This one has a peony pattern on it, is meant for girls to use. It's to be given to Princess Zhenjiang in Marquis Gu's manor. The other one with the bamboo pattern is to be given to the Prime Minister's manor. You absolutely must be sure to not make a mistake." Even his choice of brocade boxes was this thorough, so it was clear that the gifts would be extremely impressive. The second prince had truly invested a great deal of his capital. The servant was puzzled and said, "Prime Minister Yin has a lofty position and has great power. In the future, he will also become Your Highness' brother-in-law. Your Highness being so generous is something that should be done. As for Princess Zhenjiang, she's not Your Highness' sister." "What do you know?" The second prince scolded him. "If she was actually my sister, this prince would be reluctant to give it to her." "Young miss, take a look. This head ornament is apparently made of crystal." Lian Zhu helped Yu Fu brush her hair every day, so she had seen everything from gifts sent by the palace to things created under Jiu Huijiang's orders to treasures brought out by Jiu Shubai and the others. This led to her developing a discerning eye. For her to be so shocked, it had to be something exceptional. Yu Fu glanced at what she was holding, and Lian Zhu brought the brocade box up for her to see. This is something that the second prince just had delivered to Lord Marquis. When Lord Marquis heard that it contained a head ornament, he immediately knew that it was meant for young miss and sent someone to deliver it to the western wing. Yu Fu did not know what was inside, but just looking at the brocade box, Yu Fu knew that it was definitely not common. The second prince and Princess Danyang have a close relationship. Without him even noticing it, he ended up being affected by her tastes, thinking that all girls like peonies. He doesn't even consider my age. How could I like such a graceful and noble flower? Looking inside the box, she could not stop herself from raising an eyebrow. She found a complete set of head ornaments laying inside. They had not been made of gold or silver and inlaid with gems. Instead, it was the extremely rare pigeon's blood ruby, commonly known as pigeon's blood. Because of its vibrant color and eye-catching like a drop of blood, it had this unique name. It was no wonder Lian Zhu was so shocked. This was something that was sent into the palace as an offering. To be able to get a piece the size of a finger to be made into jewelry was already very desirable, much less an entire set of head ornaments. Though Yu Fu did not have much of a good impression of the second prince, she was still a girl. Faced with such a rare set of accessories, she found it very hard to refuse. Lian Zhu saw her expression and laughed, saying, "Young Miss is, in name, also the second prince's younger sister. Accepting a gift from him is completely normal. That was natural. The second prince would not think that her accepting this gift meant that she would stand on his side. Yu Fu, there's nothing wrong with this. This was originally a tribute from last year, but His Majesty gave it to the second prince. He ordered it to be made into a set of head ornaments and gave it to you. After all, you can now be considered part of the imperial family. As long as it isn't going against some rule, it's fine. I just never thought that what second senior disciple said would come true. For someone as rash as the second prince, sending a set of head ornaments is a trivial matter. There will definitely be more to follow. Jiyu Juji was confused from what he was hearing. What did Tian Shu say? He had been quite depressed for a few days before busying himself with trying to get closer to Yin Jiao to find out the truth behind her birth mother, thus he did not have the time to concern himself with what was happening at the manor. Jiyu Shubai summarized the contents of the letter sent by Tian Shu. It was simply about the conversation that he had with Princess Danyang outside and how she wanted him to work with her to break up Yu Fu and Jiyu Shubai. Why else would it be said that Princess Danyang was stupid? She had sought out the wrong person. If she had sought out her husband in Yin Shuo, she would definitely not have accidentally startled the snake. Jiyu Joga's expression sank upon hearing this. Just who does the second prince think he is? In order to gain the favor of Marquis Gu's manor, he desperately tries to win over our people, and he has the audacity to try and set his eyes on Yu Fu? Aside from Jiyu Shubai, his own eldest brother, if anyone dared to set their eyes on Yu Fu, he definitely would not treat them kindly. Jiyu Shubai smiled, but he's already done it, and he's put in his money. If it's as Yu Fu said, there will be even more to follow. Chapter 225. The fifth time he came for tea and chess. The corner of Yin Shuo's lips curled up. Then if you say that, does your highness not want a return gift? The second prince was stunned, not knowing what he meant by those words. He lowered his head and thought for a moment. Just as he was about to ask a question, he suddenly heard a servant report from the outside, "Second prince, eldest young sir, the young miss has come." Before the second prince could figure out what Yin Shuo meant by return gift, his attention was dragged in a different direction. He smiled and said, "So it was young Miss Yin. If not for her spectacular performance during the spring banquet, I would not have known that the Prime Minister had such a talented girl for a younger sister." Of the second prince's 5 visits to the Prime Minister's manor, what he had just said made him the most displeased. Tien, not sure what this side story is. I'm just going to treat it as a side story taking place after 225. Chapter 226. Impeach Jiyu Huijiang, Part 3. After Emperor Ning recovered from his illness, he favored his top general over his prime minister, and everyone in court understood this. This was also something that ought to be the case. Back when Yin Yang was still around, not even he could be compared to Jiyu Huijiang, much less someone like Yin Shuo from the younger generation. Even if there were plenty of people praising him for his steady demeanor, modest personality, and patience, in the end, his age was still a problem. Moreover, Jiyu Huijiang had kneeled for the sake of saving Emperor Ning. Not that he actually managed to kneel, but his intentions were earnest. However, court was not a battlefield. This place was a place that should have belonged to the civil officials, but there were quite a few civil officials who did not dare to say a word. They were waiting to see if this prime minister would have the courage to speak up. They figured that he would not dare. Given his young age and lack of sturdy roots in court and how he immediately went to Marquis Gu's manor to apologize after taking his position, how could he possibly dare to move against Marquis Gu's manor? Who knew that not only would he make a move, but it would also be an incredibly bold one. This subject moves to indict Marquis and head General Jiyu Huijiang. During a time of peace, he moved troops without permission and without proper consideration. With Western Kuan and our Eastern Ling having reached an accord and their princess coming to unite our two countries through marriage, this could sour the relations between our countries. His intentions are clearly impure. This subject concurs. The ones to step forward were 2 members of the Imperial Censorate. One was surnamed Xia, and the other was surnamed Dong. Both were veteran members. To dare to speak out in front of Emperor Ning against Jiyu Huaijiang when his stock was at its highest would not be possible without the two of them. Censor Ji Daogong remained in his original position with his back straight. He kept his head down, and it looked as if he would simply keep to himself. This matter was indeed unrelated to him. He was the chief official of the imperial censorate, but the two censors who had stepped forward to impeach Jiyu Huaijiang had not reported this matter to him. If he had not done it, who was it that gave the two of them the courage to do this? Ji Daogong quickly glanced up at where the top civil officials stood but did not say a word. Emperor Ning immediately lost his temper upon hearing the idea of impeaching Jiyu Huaijiang, for he thought that someone in court was jealous of him granting Marquis Gu's manor with many rewards. After hearing the rest of the accusation, he furrowed his brow. Moving the army around without permission was not a small crime, and the two censors spoke with certainty. It did not seem like they were casually trying to frame him. Emperor Ning's gaze landed on Jiyu Huaijiang. Marquis Jiyu, what do you have to say? Jiyu Huaijiang was not surprised, steadily stepping forward and cupping his hands in salute, responding to your majesty, those words are pure fiction. How could this subject not know about the movements of my own border army? Based on Emperor Ning's understanding of Jiyu Huaijiang, if he said that it did not happen, it did not happen. Impudence! Emperor Ning furiously said, as imperial censors, you too might have the right to work based on hearsay, you can't just bring up any nonsense that you hear up to us. Marquis Jiyu is the dignified standard first-rank marquis and general, yet you too dared to spout such impudent words in front of us without a proper investigation. The two censors immediately lowered their heads and cupped their hands. After Emperor Ning finished speaking, they hastily said, Your Majesty, the two of us did not immediately report it after hearing about it. We do indeed have evidence. Evidence! Jiyu Huaijiang was already very surprised by the impeachment, yet these two now said that they had evidence. If the evidence was sufficient, the punishment for moving an army without authorization would be the execution of the entire clan. The second prince lowered his head and turned to look at Yin Shuo. Emperor Ning said, Marquis Jiyu, take a close look. Has someone written this by copying your handwriting? Jiyu Huaijiang did not answer directly. Does your majesty remember when the special envoy from Western Kuan came to the capital, and the military reports were nearly stolen from this subject's manor? At that time, this subject discussed a method with your majesty. Whenever orders were sent, there would be real orders and fake orders sent at the same time via multiple routes. Do you still remember? Emperor Ning thought about it for a moment. There was indeed such a suggestion. At that time, we were worried that the real and fake reports could be mixed up, but you said that it would be fine. The real reports would have a marking that only the members of the Jiyu family's army would recognize. There would definitely be no mistakes. Jiyu Huaijiang nodded and raised the scroll that he held. This order to move troops was indeed written by this subject, but it does not have the special Jiyu family's marking. It's a report meant to deceive the enemy. He turned around and calmly looked at the two imperial censors, who knew that rather than deceiving the enemy, it ended up deceiving the imperial censors. May I ask, however, how did the imperial censorate get its hands on these fake orders meant for my Jiyu family's army? Fake. The looks on the two imperial censors' faces changed wildly. Yin Shuo very slightly furrowed his brow and secretly gave the two a look. The two imperial censors were officials who had served for many years, and they were people who had much support, thus they quickly calmed down. Lord Marquis Jiyu, you said that this mark would only be recognized by the Jiyu family's army, so it's natural that we would not recognize it. Then whether this report is real or fake, would it not just be up to Lord Marquis Jiyu to decide? Emperor Ning had wanted to severely punish the two imperial censors, but now, he could no longer punish them heavily. He felt quite unhappy. Since Marquis Jiyu is willing to plead your case, we will give him face and accept it. It's just that you two will need to act more prudently in the future. When it involves a standard first-rank official, even if you did not interrogate Marquis Gu directly, you should at least report it to your superior first. If Ji Daogong had known about this matter, he could not possibly have allowed these two imperial censors to do such a thing. The two imperial censors were incredibly ashamed and blindly agreed. Jiyu Huijiang said, although this subject believes that the blame does not lie with the two imperial censors, this subject is still interested in how they got their hands on the fake military report. If it was not stolen by someone with ulterior motives, they would not have been put in this position. The second prince closed his eyes in frustration. Yin Shuo, oh Yin Shuo, I naively thought that you were smart. Who knew that not only would he fail, but he would also lose some important pieces. Jiyu Huijiang has been part of the court for many decades, and even your father was unable to do anything about him, yet you wanted to try with your skills? Emperor Ning came to a slow realization and was finally able to react. That's right. With you sending military reports along 5 different routes, each report will surely be guarded, so how did someone get their hands on this report? Imperial Censor Yu, Imperial Censor Dong, why have you not revealed this yet? The two imperial censors exchanged a glance. It seemed that they had decided beforehand on what they would say in such a situation. Knowing that Ji Daogong would be hard to fool, they chose people who did not understand military affairs. Their plan really was quite vicious. The person who was behind this was very likely to be someone influential in Eastern Ling's court. Emperor Ning had a faint idea of who it could be, and he grew angrier the more he thought about it. He hated that he could not smash the report on his desk on that person's head. He was truly too disappointing. It was precisely at this moment that Yin Shuo, who had remained silent this entire time, suddenly stepped forward. With Jiyu Huijiang's guidance, Emperor Ning's suspicions were already cast on him, so his decision to step forward actually made Emperor Ning hesitant to make a decision. This subject believes that Your Majesty's thinking is correct. But there is one thing that this subject does not understand. We are currently not at war, and there has been no word of any unrest at the border. Has Marquis Jiyu let His Majesty know about what orders were given to the Jiyu family's army stationed at the border? Not to mention the past, but even now, Emperor Ning still did not want to believe it. Could it be that Western Kuan wanted to use a princess as a blindfold for the sake of obtaining the upper hand in a surprise strike on the border? Right, he had heard that Emperor Kuan had many children. Just counting the daughters, there were tens. To him, giving away an unloved princess would mean nothing. If there have already been some unexpected movements, no matter how fast the horse, it would not arrive in time. We were foolish in the past and should have trusted you when it came to military affairs. Huijiang, what do you think we should do now? Your Majesty believes the deity of medicine's words. He waved his hand and suddenly remembered something. Huijiang, if you really want to keep secrets from the court, is it because you suspect someone in court is working with Western Kuan? It's not quite that dire. Jiyu Huijiang waved his hand. It's just that it's not good if too many people know. If one person revealed it to their madam, and that madam told a young miss, and that young miss told a maidservant. Haha, it would not be hard for someone from Western Kuan to find out about it. When that happens, they won't dare to attack. Wouldn't all of our efforts have then gone to waste? You're right. But we feel that those two imperial censors impeaching you did not happen by accident. If they did not have someone supporting them, how could they dare to take action against you? Jiyu Huijiang did not say anything. Emperor Ning understood that he had a cautious personality, thus he made a deduction. It's not the head imperial censor, Lord Ji, so the most likely person would be. The two reached a tacit understanding, and Jiyu Huijiang said, before there is solid evidence, this subject does not wish to suspect anyone. The previous prime minister has already resigned from his position. If this subject allows anything to happen to his only son, I fear that people would begin talking about how this subject is ruthless and uses my position as a general to squeeze out the civil officials. Emperor Ning hastily said, how could this be you squeezing them out? Yin Yang was jealous of your position and tried to kill Shu Bai. That was something that he could only blame on himself. As for Yin Shuo, we previously felt that child was quite good. Looking back now to what Kuan Wushong said, the one who wanted the poison to kill Shu Bai was actually Yin Shuo, but for what reason? You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.